States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Anyone like to make a motion to approve our regular agenda?
Also move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Very good. All those in favor of approving the regular agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And noes. And consent agenda, please. Motion? Anyone? Approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. And a second.
Second.
Very good. All those in favor of approving consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Very good. No noes. And we are going to move right into a concept plan review for 21 Roots Farm at 10361 110th Street. And I'm sure that we've all had an opportunity to go through the application here. Jennifer has explained that normally she does not do a written set of comments for concept plan reviews. However, in this case, Jennifer did know that she was not going to be able to be here right on time. So I appreciate the applicant coming forward to kind of explain a little bit about what they're trying to do, and then I'm sure the council will have some questions for you both. Oh, yep. John, will you do me a favor? Can you ask her to turn on that screen right there? Just knock on the door. Lisa. We need the overhead up here?
There, she's got it.
We got it? Thanks, Lisa.
There you go,
We're a
perfect.
little low tech around here.
No, that's high tech.
We got it done. We get the job done. If you please introduce yourselves first, tell us a little bit about yourselves, and then a little bit about your plan.
We'll do that. I'm Dan Tebow, and this is,
Brittany Whittala.
and we'll give a little bit of background. So I'm a partner at EY. I've got 9 children. 4 of them have disabilities. I'll say at least 4. So there's some. One has autism, is on the autism spectrum, and then the 3 youngest have Down syndrome. One of them has Down syndrome and autism combined. Those are their adopted children. And so we're in the position where we're looking into their future and future employment for them, and other people that are in the boat, the same boat that they are with Down syndrome and autism and other types of disabilities. And so we purchased a farm, a 21-acre farm on 110th and in Kimbrough in October. And the farms previously had horses. It had boarded up to 20 horses, and then it was a hobby farm for a number of years. And then we purchased the farm. It's got about 4 acres of prairie. You can see on this picture up above there, 4 acres of prairie. It's got a house on it, a fairly new pole barn, a fairly large older barn on it, a couple of outbuildings, some woods, and then it's screened fairly well from the neighbors. And there's actually some hills here that don't show up very well, and a berm. So fairly well screened from the neighboring properties.
Is it Tebow?
Tebow, yes.
Am I saying that correctly? Tebow, very good.
Yep.
I just want to stop you. As long as we're on the overhead view looking south here,
Correct.
the small home right next to the north, right there, right on the road,
one?
is that part of the
It is
parcel?
not.
It is not part of
Nope.
the parcel. Okay,
Right.
very good. Just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, it is not. It's buried in the trees up here.
Okay.
So then we met with Jennifer Haskamp to discuss the plans, to discuss whether we thought we needed a conditional use permit or not, and what kind of issues we may need to address. And she suggested that we come to talk to you with a concept plan, get your intake on that and your input before we make any further movements forward. And so that's why we're here. Brittany is, the farm will be operated, it's 21 Roots Farm. It'll be operated as a nonprofit. It'll still pay taxes and property taxes because we're leasing the property to the charity. Brittany Whittala is the executive director. I'm going to have her talk a little bit about what's going on at the farm.
So a little bit about myself. I'm from central Wisconsin, and I grew up in a rural dairy farming community, so that's always been part of who I am. And then my life's paths have just, I have a lot of experience working with people with disabilities in various fashions. I'm currently employed at an elementary school that serves the Northeast Metro, and it's all special ed. And then I work for their family with their children and a couple other families. So the goal is I will live on the farm as a caretaker. We won't have any residential people with disabilities living on the farm. It'll just be the caretakers that will be renting from the organization. So the goal is to have probably about 3 full-time employees and then more seasonal employees. Also, we'd love to employ people with disabilities on the farm. So the concept is kind of every day farmers will arrive and they will kind of choose their path and what they're interested in, and they will have agricultural experience will be the majority of the day, and then also opportunities for enrichment. So that'll take place like in the pole barn. So maybe arts and crafts, some time for nature, and then also other experiential learning and enrichment activities. So kind of our vision and I just want to read our mission statement. So 21 Roots Farm is committed to transforming the lives of people impacted by disability through enhancing skills and cultivating independence by incorporating nature and agriculture into their daily lives. So the goal is that people will become experts. People with disabilities will arrive on the farm, they'll pick a path, and they'll be able to just be an expert in that field. Some other things we want to assist people in doing so. And yeah, I feel like 21 Roots Farm will not only be an asset to the disability community, but the community as a whole, and neighbors and the surrounding community.
And we'll keep the rural character of it. We've got 60 apple trees on an apple orchard. We'll have some farm animals in it, chickens, goats, maybe pigs, and then we'll be growing some crops. In terms of improvements or investments that we want to make, obviously a driveway with some gravel parking would be one. A picnic pavilion, just to get some shade from the sun. So think of something that you might see at a park, a nicely constructed pavilion to provide some shade. We'll have to put a septic system in. And then we'd like to improve the pole barn. It was originally built so that it could be improved to be kind of a recreation room, is what the previous owners had. So we would want to use that for like music classes and things like that, that we would do indoors. And then we'd like to, if the budgets work and if it's not too expensive, get the bigger barn up to code in a way that we could at least use it seasonally. Right now it's got a couple of lights, it's got no plumbing in it, limited electricity, so if we could make some improvements so we could do some dances in there, performances, recitals, things of that nature. It'd all be run by 21 Roots Farm, not leased out to some third parties to go ahead and use it or have other unrelated events. It would be just our own events there. That would be something down the road if it wasn't cost prohibitive to do it. So that's basically it in a nutshell.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and turn to Mr.
Sure.
Carr. I'm sure he has a couple of questions for you right out of the gate here. Thank you.
All right,
Sure.
thank you.
Sorry I was dying of a coughing jag there. So I didn't-
You want me?
I'm better now.
We just won't shake
Is there
hands.
codeine in that? Ooh,
Yeah, I think
that's
there
nice.
is. You're going to be good.
Thanks. I ran out. You said you bought this in October,
End of October.
end of October. What was your intention when you bought it?
To be able to use it as a farm for,
So you bought it sort of with the intention of doing this?
Yeah,
Not
so
to live there?
well, both actually. So
Okay.
I'm not living there. Brittany and Amy will be living there. And so that's where Brittany will be full-time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Not me with my 9 kids. We wouldn't.
Not with you and 9 kids. We like kids.
Yeah.
Okay, so the, a couple of issues that come into play generally, obviously currently now as a hobby farm, you don't need a permit. You can
Correct.
do what you want. and
Yep.
We kind of like that in Grant. When you come in with a use, then, we start to get nervous because we certainly don't want to have trouble with the neighbors, although, you have land rights. You can do what you want to, if it's allowed, you can do it. Whether the neighbors approve of it or not, that's kind of a moot point because it's allowed. But we do regulate if it's over, so we can help protect the neighbors.
Right.
So the issues that come up on this one, parking, how many cars are going to be coming?
So we're going to have about 20 farmers a day and 5 employees. And so they'll be dropped off and picked up.
Okay?
The parking, we can be flexible on what we think we need,
Okay.
but I don't think we would need more than 10 spots to start. If
Are we
have-
talking cars, or are people going to be driving wagons and trailers and pulling wagons and trailers in every day?
No
with
wagons
their
and
own
trailers. It'll be
animals?
cars and vans primarily.
Okay, so
Some
people.
People.
Yeah.
Okay, people will be coming and going.
Yeah.
Okay, this is also on a gravel road.
Yep.
Okay, so on gravel roads, we're a little bit more nervous. Gravel roads can get beat up pretty bad with traffic. I don't know what the traffic count on that road would be, but that would be a good thing that I'd want to know before I saw, this application go forward, because if that severely goes up, it's gonna impact all the neighbors driving on the road and everything else. So that's something I would be curious about. I would be curious about parking, and of course, how many people would be coming and going. I'd be curious about, where your, social events, or whatever they would be called, where would they be held? An enclosed building, outside. Enclosed building, less noise, less issue for the neighbors, things like that, okay? So that would be something I want more information on. As far as the fact that staff doesn't, know where exactly it fits in our zoning, that's something we'd actually have to talk a little bit more about. How many days, what days these events would be, maybe limiting those, these are things that come to mind.
Could you
The other
clarify that for a second? When you said how many days and what events?
Well, how many days would you be having your events? Your day-to-day, what's that gonna be? Every day, Monday through Friday?
So if you think about it in terms of farming and then going into the pole barn and doing like music class, arts and crafts and those kinds of things, we would want to do that every day.
You'd wanna do that every day?
Yeah.
That
Or go
every
out for
day
nature
including
walks or,
Saturday,
no, well, sorry, 5 days a week.
that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
So 5 days a week for
Yep.
that. Maybe event on a weekend once in a while?
Yeah.
Okay, what?
Once in a while, not.
No,
yeah,
well, we need
yeah,
to know that.
yeah.
I'm just saying things we need to know. This is basically a sketch plan for what you wanna do. The other thing, you do have the buildings, and you said some of them aren't that finished or whatever. One of the concerns we'd have is because you're gonna operate that as a public building, you're gonna have to go through our building inspector.
Correct.
I would suggest you talk to our building inspector. You sound like you have grand plans. Before you go too far, I would talk to our building inspector and see if these make sense, or maybe you wanna scale back your plans. Because then if you come forward with less of a plan, maybe it's more palatable for us because it's less grandiose. Your small pageant could turn into the Macy's, New Year's parade, as far as the neighbors are concerned. So we wanna make sure what it is. So these are things that I'd be concerned about if you decided to come forward with an application, and maybe some things you could talk to our staff about.
Okay, and I assume we'd work with the city planner on that, with
Correct.
the application process.
the
and
building
planning
inspector and-
Inspector,
yeah.
yep, okay,
Yeah, and obviously you can call any of us if you want any advice or thoughts or anything.
all right.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
Danny?
Yeah, first off, I like your philosophy and your plan.
Thank you.
I think the biggest thing, as Tom's mentioned, will be how many events do you do? An event center is a different animal than a
Right.
hobby farm where you're teaching kids or running a school, if you will. So, little tighter definition, a little more detail as to the frequency of the activities you're doing
Okay.
and the traffic that it generates.
Yeah. That all makes sense. Thank you, Danny. Mr. Tebow, can you sound as though you're pretty active in this area, in this arena, helping these children, putting yourself out there to do this.
Yeah.
Can you describe to me now what you're doing at this point? Obviously, this is a plan for the future. What are you
Yeah.
doing now? Talk to me about
With regard to this,
well, not just this, but are you doing other activities right now? Do you have other events, or do you do anything else right now?
I don't know what you're asking.
Do you have another location where you help students, where you help
No.
other people? Do you do any fundraising in
Yes,
this area?
not in this area. We do a concert at our house every year,
Oh, okay.
outdoors. We raise money for different charities, Cancer Kids Fund some years, Healing Haiti, which is based in White Bear. We do one event a year at our house.
Okay. Are you from White Bear, can I ask?
I'm from Shoreview.
Oh, from Shoreview. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, nice area. Okay.
And then on this, the struggle for us was,
Uh-huh.
we've been looking for about a year for some properties. And we were looking at actually doing something with the school, was one path. And it's kind of when real estate comes up, sometimes you buy it, you can't wait and go through all of the processes to get everything nailed down, because it takes 6 months, 8 months, and
Well, contingencies
Wait,
can certainly be troublesome. They're
Correct.
helpful, but they can certainly be troublesome. I don't think
What's
there's
that?
any, they can be very helpful. Contingency
Helpful
can
or
be very
troublesome.
helpful, but also it can be troublesome, correct?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Talk talk to me more about how the students would arrive and how many farmers, I understand you're calling your students, if you would, Brittany,
Yeah.
farmers, future
Yeah.
farmers.
Yeah.
And how do they arrive again? So some of them would be coming from their private homes, perhaps parents or significant others would be driving them there. And talk to me more about the commercial traffic that'd be in
So
and out of
they
there.
could come from their group homes that they live
Okay.
in. Most of these will be already out of school.
Okay.
So they're not in the school system anymore. They do have access to special transportation.
Okay.
And sometimes it could be carpooling. So we've talked, my wife is here, to the extent we have people in the western area, we would actually carpool them from our house.
Okay.
And then, so people would be coming from the east in the Stillwater area as well as from other surrounding areas. So we anticipate they come on different directions on 110th. But mostly they'll have their parents will be dropping them off. That's our anticipation right now.
Okay, great.
And if parking, I know there's traffic and parking.
Right.
For us, if the parking were an issue, we think we could expand to whatever would fit, because we would want parking. I don't know if gravel is okay or not. I know that there's some rules on paved and gravel, but gravel's more fits in with I think the area.
It does fit in with the area, and it kind of fits in with what's I normally think of as the old Black Farm. My son was friends with their son for years, so I'm real familiar with the farm there. And moving forward, just a couple of other comments on this. Parking is normally, for something like this, that even run as a nonprofit, you're still going to be falling into a business use classification, a quasi-business use classification. So there would be some formulas used for the parking spaces. Our planner could talk to you about that. The buildings, as Tom mentioned very quickly, would need to be brought up to certain codes for the public to be in them, the fire codes and this
Right.
type of thing. You guys know this. This probably isn't news to you. On the purpose itself, Brittany, I'm going to kind of ask you a couple
Yeah.
of questions. I'm a little hazy on the purpose here. Now,
Yeah.
I understand the farmers are going to come in,
Yep.
and a farmer might come in and say, darn it, I like goats, and I'm going to learn how to be a husband to goats, do husbandry for goats. So do these folks, they come in, they're past school age, so they're 19, 20, but some of them are probably going to have some pretty profound disabilities going on.
Some, yeah.
Yeah. So do they move on once they become trained? What is are you going to be recycling your farmers, as it were, to have your
Yeah.
farmers go out and go to other farms, perhaps gain employment? Can you talk to me about that plan?
Yeah, I think initially it's just a lot of people don't have access to exposure to animals, and they don't know what they might enjoy. And so I think exploration, and then kind of seeing, is this a good fit? Because not everyone likes being outside, not everyone likes nature, but let's give people opportunity to experience it. And give them a chance to be the expert at something. I think that's the huge thing. And so I think one of the other ideas that we've had is selling our products that we produce on the farm. And so that will be in various forms, but farmers markets. So then maybe from there, people can move on to get a retail job because they found out they enjoy that. So I think it's not a lifelong, people aren't going to be here. It's going to be recycling people.
And you teach functional math, like real math, like going out and buying supplies and then selling and having the retail experience, selling the products and getting paid to go out and sell the products too at farmers markets, yeah.
Okay, good enough. Now, Brittany, as I understood it was kind of quick in the beginning, and I was kind of looking at the paperwork a bit.
Yeah.
You are going to live on the property? Is
Yes.
that the plan
Yep.
at this point? Okay. Now, Brittany, you, just to make it clear, you are an employee of the nonprofit. Is that correct? You are not related?
Yeah.
I understand that?
Yep, we're not.
Okay, so you're an
Yep.
employee of that?
Yep, I'm an
Okay.
employee.
All right, so there'd be an employee at the property. Would you be the only one, or how many folks would be
so
staying
there'll
there?
be about 3 of us caregivers.
Okay.
2 my women farmers.
Yep, and okay, that's about all I have, and yeah, working with the staff, as Tom had said, is key. We're sort of a backup, but normally the staff is gonna answer 99.9% of your questions.
Right,
They are your
technical.
first resource. Kim?
Mayor and council members, the question is, what type of CUP?
Right.
Because the
I was
use that
getting to
they
that.
described to us through the pre-app meeting doesn't really fit into your use table. Is it an event center? Is it a school? And that's what they were kind of looking at for the feedback for, is what do you see this use as?
And at some point, Kim, I knew that was sort of their question. At some point, when I was gonna end this, I was gonna kind of put it back onto staff. and try to ask them to find something where they think it fits so that we could take a look through that table and see whether or not we felt it was there. I mean, you've got a school, which is an allowed use, but then you've got events going on there. You've got sales, which if there were any sales of material directly from the property, probably would not work. The farmers markets and such, taking it off site would be the way to go for me. But
We couldn't find one, honestly.
yeah, I know,
That's
and
why
I
we put it to
can't.
you.
Yeah, thanks.
The interesting thing is we're doing this without any government funding
Yeah.
or asking for any reimbursement
Yeah.
because of the regulations and.
Yep.
it doesn't
No,
fit
you're
very there.
you're on board with my philosophy. Tom, go ahead.
Before the other two gentlemen get to speak, but, yeah, I think, if the staff's looking for direction, if you're doing an agricultural activity out there with people that are coming and working and then you're taking it off-site to a farmer's market to sell, that happens a lot in Grant.
Yeah.
Whether they're learning or not while they're doing it, we could call it a school, but if you're not having events, I would not care. And I don't think you even need a CUP. The only, and there are people that, the only issue you'll have is traffic coming and going from the site. Okay, so the staff, I may be corrected, and I may be told you need a COC or something. There's different options. But we have many places, and there are, many community farms out there, and they're coming and going. If you're teaching them and you're doing what you need to do, they're farmers. Farmers get to farm in Grant, and I don't see a need for a permit. If you start doing events and things like that on site, that's where the gray area comes in.
When you say an event, how would you define?
A lot of people coming, grandma, grandpa, friends, family, mom, dad, everybody comes, you have some kind of play event or whatever. Those things, I don't know your plan,
Yeah.
but those kind of things, it's more of an event. And that's where we have neighborhood issues and things where it's not quite in the plan and you
Yeah.
need to do
So-
something. So, if you didn't do that, then
So in your mind, then if we did everything in the pole barn, with the farmers and everything else, that's fine. If we wanted to expand that and have grandma and grandpa coming for, well, obviously within reason, having like a birthday party celebration.
people have
Then come
parties all the
back
time
with
in
the
Grant,
CUP.
weddings in their backyard.
Yeah.
That's not the issue. It's,
Constant.
Yeah, and let me stop Tom there. We're not talking about family gatherings. You came to us, to our planner, and said that there were going to be events held, fundraising,
Right.
large
Yeah.
scale. Are you going to
Yep.
cater these events? There's going to be music. There's going to be a number of cars there. So events to us mean very simply a disruption to the neighbors surrounding this because
Yep.
we'd be dropping this use into their neighborhood where they already are and they're not used to it. So when we get these types of questions and that type of direction from our planner, we expect you to come in with much more detail in terms of what these events are going to look like
Yep.
and how often you're going to have them, what times you're going to have them. You know what I'm saying?
Right, I think I
gotta
saw
have that
that in the-
information.
in the application.
Yeah,
Yep.
we got to have that in order to even point you in a direction. But Tom is right. In terms of growing produce, having some people come in and pick it, and then truck farm it off to the farmer's garden, you don't even need to come here. You're done, okay?
And then
Danny,
if
you
we-
had one, and then I've got to move to these gentlemen here.
Okay.
Well, just, how do you see the funding working, guys? How do you?
So funding will come from several sources. One is the products themselves, right, that we'll be selling, and there'll be certain revenue from that. Donations is another one. Donations from me, donations from supporters, and then we'll charge some people if they want to have some of the programming where they come in and do the farming, we'll charge them. And then some of them will be paid too as employees, so.
Okay. Mr. Giefer.
First of all, I think the concept is great. I mean, anything that can promote and preserve agriculture and rural lifestyle fits right in with Grant here, so I think that's great. I think the mayor and the other stated pretty well. It's really the definition of the events, I think, is what you really need to flesh out,
Yeah.
and that will kind of drive everything else. Large scale, like catered, how many people? Just put some more thought in that. I think it'll help determine.
Totally agree. Are you set?
Yep.
Okay. John?
Like the idea. One question that I do have though for funding, will you charge tuition to the people who come?
The tuition, no, but we'll charge a fee to some of the people that come, and some will not. Yeah.
So some people will be subsidized and some people will pay.
Some,
you know,
everyone
you
will be
charge.
subsidized, it's just that we'll charge some people to attend, yeah.
Okay, so if you had, I mean, if it's 20 farmers, and that's, you know, in theory, that's what you said, roughly, 20 people come in, and these are people that, like you said, Brittany, exposure to the farming, you let them know what it's like, and these are people that, you know, for whatever reason, they're coming and they want to learn. How do you charge some of these people? Do you charge all of the people that want to come in and learn? I mean, whether it's a small fee, large fee, I don't know, but I mean, have you?
We plan to charge something, not everybody, some will not, and some based on need will not pay. But the idea is for them to get the training and get the, we want them to have a day where they can be somewhere where everyone feels good that they're there, they're being productive, they're learning skills, they're learning also social skills while they're doing that, and communication skills, and then hopefully get trained, they can go out and get other jobs, or even get bigger jobs on the farm where they get paid as employees. You know, we need to build a fence, you know, we'd like to hire them first if someone's got able-bodied enough to be able to do that. But we may have some people in wheelchairs too.
Right.
And so we'll have planters that are elevated for them to be able to go in and do some working with plants and vegetables.
Good. So some people would pay a tuition type of thing, and then
Yeah.
others that may need-based, that's where your fundraisers come in to supplement what they may not be able to afford, and that's where the fundraising comes in?
Yeah, if we relied on that, just anything that we charge anyone, it would be a loss.
Yeah.
But it's also nice to have people have some stake in it,
Yeah,
because when something's free, there's an unlimited demand and no care for it, and
right.
you know, those of you in business understand that.
It's amazing what happens when you start giving things away for free, isn't it? John, are you set?
I am.
Do that.
I am.
Let me summarize this for you, just quickly. You know what? Your farming plans, the plans to bring in these farmers to do some work there, get some training, all that stuff, and then truck it off, not sell it there, but truck it off to farmers markets and other, whatever establishments you choose to do business with, has many other examples in Grant. You wouldn't be alone at all.
Assume so.
The
Yeah.
events, you have to flesh out in much, much more detail and plan those out ahead. We have other things in Grant that have events, and before they come up here, before we can even tell them what CUP to apply for or how to apply for it, we've got to have that information. It's just not possible for us to even point you in too good of a direction until we get that. But once you get that type of detail to
Yeah.
the staff, then we can go somewhere with it.
We got what we wanted, I think. The
Okay,
guidance
good.
that we got is, because we were unclear whether the things in the pole barn, I'll just say, what we talked, the enrichment things, whether that needed a CUP or not.
No.
The
What-
sense I'm getting is no, but
It needs a
if we do
safe
events, then-
environment. Well,
Yeah.
anything that you do in the pole barn this
permits, I
is, well, you're going to need permits, but what you're really going to need is you're going to need to turn it into something that a building inspector would say is
Right.
safe for habitation. So you know this.
Yeah.
You sound like you're in business as well,
Yeah,
so
I
you
know
know
that.
that.
Yeah, we
You know
gotta
all
have
this stuff.
sprinklers and
So
everything.
that stuff would need to be handled right out of the gate. And then the events, if you just tell us more about them, really lay it out in detail what you're thinking about doing. What time? Would there be any night events? Would there be music that's amplified? Would there be any amplification taking place out there, whether it's for an announcer during a birthday party? Anything like that needs to be fleshed out so that we understand that use 100% as much
Right.
as you can detail it.
And then for us, and I guess there's two paths. It can be, let's go down the path with everything simple.
Yeah.
Then down the road, figure out if we want to have whatever someone thinks an event
Yeah.
is and define it when it's more clear to
If
us.
you
or
wanted to
go for
intensify,
it all
Mr.
now.
Tebow, later on, that's completely up to you,
Yeah.
because right now, you're just kind of underneath the radar
Yeah.
a little bit in terms of the agricultural use of it.
Yeah.
Okay?
I got that. Thank
That
you.
make sense?
Yeah, this was very good.
Kim, do you have anything to add to this?
No.
Nothing. Okay. Real good. Tom? Dave?
No, I think it's an agricultural use. There's a right to farm, and we want to keep our ag land, and we want to keep rural. And your definition up to a certain point is if it's perfect, and I don't think it even needs a permit. But there you
If
go.
it stays there.
Yeah.
And
And I like your plan start it up, see what happens, and then figure
And
out.
we picked Grant for a reason. We like the rural. I like the fiscal responsibility. You know, you want it, you pay
Aw,
for it. I like all that. So it's like,
Yeah, 4,000 people.
man,
and-
I don't know,
Yeah,
guys. What is
4,000
going on?
people and $1.2 million is pretty fiscally responsible, I would say. Yeah, it's about as fiscally responsible as you
because
can get.
I own it and will lease it to them, it'll still be on the tax rolls.
I understand.
Hey, thank you, appreciate it.
All right,
Thank you
thank you
for
very
coming.
much. That was
you.
helpful. Thank you.
Good luck, good luck.
Thank you very much. I can notarize your after.
Can you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Moving on, City Engineer Brad, you don't have any action items, but we are going to talk about the Gateway final plat submission, and I understand that Brad, because Jennifer is running a little late with some other commitments, Brad's going to start this up for us, if that's correct.
That is correct.
Ask you a lot of hard questions.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council, tonight we are considering resolution number 2019-05, the final plat for the Gateway subdivision. The applicant obviously is applying for the final plat. At the last meeting, the applicant was granted the preliminary plat approval with contingencies or conditions on that approval of Resolution 2018-26. Several of the conditions are listed in the staff report that you have in front of you. These range from, there's 16 items, I guess, ranging from septic and water contingencies based on what Washington County's Environmental Services discovers during their investigations. The application is based on some approvals from the city. I guess I'm having a hard time reading the staff report here. I didn't prepare it. Jennifer did, of course. But just to give you a brief summary of the site, there's approximately 16 lots as part of the subdivision. These residential lots will be part of a homeowners association. The prepared subdivision will be planned in one phase. The applicant will decide, or I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time reading this. All 16 lots will be served with individual wells and individual septic systems. The existing property is irregular in shape, ranging from, I think, 5 acres to 29 acres.
Okay,
A lot.
Brad, I'll jump in a
Sure.
little bit if you want me to.
Yep, go ahead.
if you don't mind. So what we're doing tonight, and I'm just going to ask for your expertise here, what we're doing tonight is looking at the final plat, approving the final plat for the Gateway Trail development. But tell me how we handle, just for maybe new members' edification here, how we handle the number of contingencies and conditions that it's been conditioned upon. So how do those get cleared? How do we know those are going to get done? How does all that happen, Brad?
Yep, so staff will review the contingency items that were part of the preliminary plat process. And so we've reviewed several of those items. As I've mentioned, there were 16 originally, and we're down to the final 8 that would be part of the resolution tonight to accept the final plat. So between Jennifer and myself and the city attorney, we would review the submittal and review those items and make sure that they're satisfying the plat process.
Before the final recording takes place?
Right, so, yes, correct.
Okay, very good. Mr. Giefer.
Well, I think you kind of answered the question. So let's get signed by the mayor, and then you guys make sure all the conditions are satisfied. And then how does that officially get recorded into the? Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor and council members, I think number one, just back up a little bit, as presented, the final plat has to be contingent with the preliminary plat. And the planner has noted that the final plat is consistent with the preliminary plat, and there are no significant changes. So that's number one. When the resolution is approved, the final plat is recorded at the Washington County Recorder's Office. The plats are recorded, signed off by the city attorney, the mayor, and the clerk, and those are recorded down at the county, and all conditions are met before that is recorded.
Okay, before it's recorded, okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Jeff, do you want to keep going, or do you have anything?
I will just also note that the resolution was reviewed by the city attorney as a normal process. That was included. It wasn't in your packets, but all of you did get a copy of that, as well as a copy of the developer's agreement, which was a condition of approval as well. And the developer's agreement was reviewed by the city attorney as well.
Okay. Excellent. I'm going to move down then to John, Jeff, unless you have more.
Go ahead.
Okay. John, any questions?
No, no questions.
No questions. Danny?
And we now have our city planner. If
Yay!
you have any questions, any additional questions. And in the city engineer's defense, there's very little light over here, so.
So it also, we threw this at you probably today. So thanks for stepping in, Brad.
That is
wasn't
not
easy.
true. That is not true. It wasn't thrown at him.
He's not used to doing this. Jennifer is the true artist with this stuff, let's be honest. So, is what it is. Jennifer, I don't know if you want to jump in. We haven't done too much. We got a quick explanation from our engineer. And Kim talked to us about how plats get recorded, that the conditions will be handled before the plat has its final recording at the county. And if you have anything else to add in here, I have a couple of questions, but I think Tom's first here. Unless you want to start off and reintroduce this, Tom, if that would be okay with
I'm
you.
fine with
They're
whatever
ready.
you want, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, well, let's see what Jennifer wants to do. I'm going to throw it in her.
Kim says you're ready,
They're
so
We're ready.
I'm going
Tom,
with it.
Tom, ask some questions, Tom.
Okay.
Go for it.
My only question, and Kim had said, Jennifer, that you reviewed the preliminary plat and the final plat, and you find them consistent, and we're good to go?
Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, or council, sorry, I have to remember where I am. Yes, that is correct. So there were a few conditions with respect to adjusting a lot line, for example, to meet and comply. So that's been updated and reflected on the plat, or the final plat. So it's consistent with the recommendation of the conditions, and then also with the preliminary plat, there's no substantive changes.
So the conditions are the same. We may not be all done with all the conditions yet?
The conditions are not the same.
I thought you said they were consistent with the preliminary and the final plat.
They are, but so the preliminary plat included conditions that required them to address on both the preliminary plat and potentially on the final plat.
Okay.
Those conditions have been met that are required in order for them to be able to record it.
Okay.
There are a couple conditions that are outstanding.
That's what I was asking, yeah.
But those are not the same conditions necessarily as what were in the preliminary
Oh,
plat.
they're not on the plat. Okay, got it.
So, because we look at the final plat which is a different tool than the preliminary plat, so they're slightly different, but they are consistent.
All right, they're consistent, but there are a couple conditions left before we can finalize it. Is that what you're
Correct. There
saying?
is also one change to the conditions with respect to the septic permit process. So that is slightly different than what is in the preliminary plat. But the
Okay, but-
intent is consistent.
But they're consistent and they'll be performed and get done before we're signing off on it.
That's correct. So in terms of when we look at a final plat and the conditions that are contained within it, some of them need to be taken care of prior to the recording of the actual final plat. Some of them are passed through into the development agreement, and some of them are conditions prior to them receiving a building permit or doing any site work. So there's varying levels or timelines in which those conditions have to be met.
Right, we have the plat to sign, and then we'll have the development agreement, which is kind of a project, could be for tweaks if needed. But at this point, we're moving forward, everything's good.
Right, so, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we did, and I don't know if Kim got it or not, just because of the weather and everything going on today, there is a draft development agreement that has been prepared. So what is, perfect, so what's outstanding in that essentially is figuring out the numbers that go into it with respect to the letter of credit and that type of stuff, but overall, I think it's a pretty solid draft.
Got it. Okay, that's all the questions I had.
I did go through that, Jennifer, and those numbers in terms of letters of credit and the other amounts that are going to be escrowed for us, that's all going to take place as this moves forward to that final plat. What the questions that I have are on a couple of the conditions. I'm so glad you walked in. I read with some real concern Washington County's updated method for the septic and well. I don't quite get that. Can you explain? I'm sure you understand it better than I. Can you explain the change there? Because I didn't like what I read.
Sure. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, actually, I view it as positive.
Okay,
and let me
good.
tell you why.
Good.
So the timing of it is not perfect because, of course, we like to know when processes are changing at the county in advance of an application and not during the middle of one. So obviously, from that perspective, it was a little bit troubling. However, just to give you some context with respect to what staff usually does, we usually reach out to Washington County because they're the permitting authority for the septic. And then we go back and forth and try to find the right person, and it's a very convoluted, non-direct process. And so we always try to verify that they've actually gone out, looked at the subdivision, looked at where the borings are, et cetera. But we never really get a formal review process going with that. So now, with a couple of retirements at the county, they've actually instituted a little bit more formality of there's actually an application that they respond to. They go out, they do this, and then we get a formal response back. So actually, staff, from my perspective, I'm kind of happy about it because I know there's actually a tool now and a process that needs to be followed. It's just the timing of it wasn't fantastic with respect to this particular project.
You're telling me there was no process in place before to do this?
That is what I'm telling you. So, but staff still did the process. It just was a very somewhat.
It was a one-sided process that we were driving when they were the permitting authority. I think I've got it down now.
It was relatively painful.
Yeah,
yes.
relatively unorganized. The only other question that I had for you is the easement to the east, if I'm not mistaken, to that small property. Are those discussions ongoing, or can you update me on that, please?
That is correct. And actually, I see the resolution. So staff did forward also, and I apologize if it didn't get into your packet. I do have a copy with me. We revised condition number 2.
You
I'm
did.
proposing, I should say, to revise condition number 2 within the resolution. So I spoke with the applicant today, and
Yeah, great.
no, that's okay. So I spoke with the applicant today, and the issue is whether or not going through Block 2, Lot 1 is the appropriate location in which for that easement to come through for a driveway. And so the applicant requested, hey, can we instead of making it a condition that they need to get this driveway easement established, that we will continue to work together to figure out what makes the most sense in terms of a driveway easement. And I think that is completely reasonable in this case because, A, we haven't heard formally from Washington County exactly where they wanted to see that driveway. B, it would be a private driveway easement, and so we would not be a party to it. We would review it to ensure that it was there, but we're not a party to the easement itself. So I think it's reasonable to say that we will continue to work together to figure out what the appropriate location is and work with Washington County. So I see in the copy that Kim put in front of me that language is not revised. So if you give me a moment, I can pull out the revised language that I would propose to you.
Well, I'm sure you'll have that in time for a signature on this, but my question is a little more general than that. The county ordered this easement to take place, or did a beneficiary, the property owner there, request it to take place? Can you tell me just the process real quick?
Sure. If you recall, when we went through the preliminary plat process, Washington County made a comment to us and requested that we consider it. During the public, they put the request out there during the preliminary plat process and prior to the public hearing. So at that time, staff brought it forward and said, is this something that the city or that the applicant would be willing to consider? At the time, they said, sure, we're happy to explore it. We're comfortable with it. So then it kind of carried through that Washington County obviously is saying they're trying to minimize the number of access points. If you recall, in order to grant the variance, part of that methodology or reasoning behind it was due to that. So I think it makes sense to keep it in as a condition, but I also understand the let's keep it open as let's discuss it, because we're not exactly sure where it should go. So
Right,
that was
yeah.
the process.
And I got that, and that can be handled on the developer's basis in terms of handling that. So that's, as long as that condition's there and we get it figured out one way or the other. Anything else for us, Jennifer? Or I'm going to turn to Mr. Schneider for some opinions on the development agreement and some other things. Did you have anything else for us?
No,
Nope.
that's it.
Okay. Mr. Schneider, do you have any opinions that you'd like to share on this development agreement? Any concerns or anything else that you see?
No, not at this time. I spoke with the planner today, and she indicated that after the numbers were finalized, we'd both collectively review it and make any final changes and approve it on that basis.
All right, Dave. That sounds good. I think it's time for me to say, welcome to Grant, gentlemen. Mr. Carr, guess I can't say that yet.
Well, I just had Jennifer was digging for the resolution. If we're gonna pass this, we should probably have you tell us what that,
We can change that thing, and I was gonna let her
Yeah.
pull that
I've got
up.
it.
yep.
good.
So I'd like to hear what that is, I guess. and then maybe-
Okay, so the proposed revision to the language in item number 2, condition number 2, is that the applicant shall continue to work with the city and Washington County to determine whether a private driveway access easement through Block 2, Lot 1 to serve the property east is needed, and if so, shall provide a private driveway easement and provide the easement language to the city for review and approval by the city attorney.
Okay, included by reference, because I'm not gonna try to write that down.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we're there, gentlemen.
Questions?
I don't have any other questions. Gentlemen, John, Jeff, Jenny? Tom, you good?
Good.
All right, great.
And I would move to approve Resolution 2019-05.
Have a second.
Second.
All those in favor of said resolution and the language incorporated by reference by Jennifer Haskamp, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I apologize, guys. I thought for sure you were the developer. Sorry about that. You're hockey guys. Kept looking at you going, am I gonna get a reaction from this guy? All right, let's move on from that, shall we? Okay, let me get my paperwork back in order here. City Attorney Dave Schneider, I don't believe Dave has any items for us tonight. We are going to move right into new business, a consideration of Planning Commission appointments. We are here, we had some interviews today. We've lost 2 members of our Planning Commission who now sit at our council table. They sort of had their baptism by fire, if you will, through the Planning Commission, and it kind of is that there. And now they have moved up to the council, and we are very, very pleased to have them here. But we need to replace those 2 gentlemen on our Planning Commission. So I am looking for motions. Mr. Carr?
Yeah, and I think we should get into that, maybe say who applied, and then maybe get into that. I do like,
Free, Tom. Yep.
we have not, we applauded briefly at a special meeting that we had, our 2 new council members, but I think it might be appropriate at their first official meeting, that we maybe give them a round of applause, so.
I think you're right. Congratulations, gentlemen, and welcome. We are very, very glad to have you, and we look forward to getting a lot of positive things done with Grant within the budget.
Okay.
We did have 4 different folks come up and apply for the Planning Commission. I'm going to read off their names just real quick because they put themselves out there, and it's not always easy to do that. We have Lauren Cedarstrom, and please stop me if I say this wrong, sir, Wayne Sarapo, David Tronrud, and Gary Bauman. And those are the 4 applicants that we have up. So unless there's anything else, gentlemen, I will entertain motions at this time.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
would it be appropriate to make single motions or,
Yeah, single motions are
Single
fine.
motions?
Yep.
well, I'm just asking.
No, I think
procedure.
single
So,
motions
okay,
are
that'd be great.
appropriate. You okay with that?
I would
Yep.
make a motion that we nominate David Tronrud to the Planning Commission.
Okay, need a second on that?
I'll second.
Danny has a second. All those in favor of David coming on the Planning Commission, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Do we have any nays? 5-0, very good. We need one more member, I'll entertain motions on that.
I'd like to,
Sorry.
I'd like to make a motion for Gary Bauman to join the planning commission.
And I would second that as well.
All those in favor of Gary Bauman joining the planning commission, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you very much, and congratulations, gentlemen. Our planning commission is going to keep you busy. We have some important stuff coming to it, so do your studying well, and I'm sure you're going to contribute. We're glad to have you. Let's move right into the consideration of January 2nd, 2019 City Council meeting minutes. Of course, our council members Giefer and Rogg are going to abstain. Do I have a motion to approve these minutes?
I would move to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor of approving these minutes signify by saying aye. Aye. And that's 3 and 2 abstentions. All right, Jennifer, I'm going to turn back to you under unfinished business for consideration of resolution number 2018-25, the U.S. Solar Text Amendment application. If you'd like to set that up for us first.
Sure. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I don't know what my problem is
That's
tonight.
okay.
I'm so sorry. I was at a council meeting before this, so I should have it. So before you this evening, we are looking at a request from U.S. Solar to amend our zoning ordinance to permit CSES, or community solar energy systems, within the A1 and A2 zoning districts with a conditional use permit. We did hold a special meeting on January 29th with the purpose of actually having a discussion around the proposed use and the amendment to our ordinances to account for or accommodate such use. So this evening, staff did not prepare a presentation for you since really the discussion on the 29th was quite robust and I believe was actually over 3 hours long. And there was quite a bit of discussion with respect to your reasoning and conclusions and your direction. So based on that discussion, staff prepared the draft resolution that is before you this evening. My apologies that it did get to you late. It got to you late this afternoon or mid-afternoon. There was obviously not a lot of turnaround time between the 29th and today. So I apologize from that perspective, but you'll see that obviously it's a pretty extensive, detailed resolution that hopefully reflects your discussion on the 29th. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Very good. Any questions for Jennifer, gentlemen? Or I've got a couple of things to say here. Mr. Watt, I wonder if you'd like to come up and speak to us before we take any further action on this? Let's give you a minute or two here if you want to talk to us about, number one, our special meeting that we had, and then any late thoughts you might have on this, sir.
Mr. Mayor and council members, my name is David Watts. Again, I work for U.S. Solar. The council is essentially the only folks in Grant that I've spoken to that oppose community solar, and I cannot figure out why. Our application supports property rights, benefits the community, injures no one, and is supported by 194 signatures on a community-based petition. The council's position has been to deny at whatever the cost. The cost is harming property rights, denying that additional tax revenue for the city, denying local environmental benefits, and ignoring the overwhelming public support. I'd like to enter into the record a link that was emailed to the clerk, Kim, this afternoon, but just would like to make sure that is formally entered into the record. It's the most comprehensive study on property values related to solar farms being nearby or actually directly adjacent. Looked at over 250 solar gardens, and the adjoining uses found no impact to property values. This is in addition to the Chisago County assessor's conclusion that I stated at the special meeting of, again, no impact to property values. This application has been blown out of proportion. This application would bring probably 1 or 2 8-acre community solar gardens into the thousands of acres in the city of Grant. On behalf of Joyce Wielander and the 194 Grant residents who signed the petition, and those that didn't get a chance to but still support this initiative, we encourage you to do the right thing and approve this text amendment application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watt.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to start on this end. Mr. Rogg, do you have any comments before we move to our conclusion here?
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to see what was submitted, but, it's very interesting to say that there's no statistical difference, but you really have to do the math behind it, and hypothesis test and all that, and I assume you did. You did?
I did.
Okay,
But the
so,
appraiser did, yes.
okay, so, it's hearsay, because unless it's statistically done correctly, and I'm a person that does that stuff as a job, it's difficult to just say blanket statements like that. So I just want to make sure that if there is data done and statistically done, I'd like to see the data. Okay,
Okay. Very good. John, are you all
I'm finished, yes.
set? Okay, real good. Mr. Giefer.
Well, I'd just like to encourage the residents, because this is a very contentious topic, to look at the 3-hour meeting that Jennifer mentioned we had, because there was a lot of things that were talked about. Some of these are summarized here. I got a couple comments too I just wanted to let the folks here know about. So the notion that 194 signatures represents the majority of citizens of Grant, I don't really think that's accurate. I mean, when I was running for election to this seat right here, I talked to quite a few residents, and the solar was a big topic, and my experience was only a handful of people were actually for commercial solar operations, so that kind of contradicts the claim that the vast majority of the citizens are for it. And if you look at John, I think was quite clear in his stance against solar in his campaigning, and the election results, I think people that voted kind of took that as a pretty big consideration when they're casting their vote. So I think that kind of speaks for themselves. Also, when you consider that, when you're talking about an agricultural use here, farms and fields, they don't need to be screened. So I think that's one of the key distinctions here when we're talking about if this is agriculture or commercial. The fact that regular farmland, regular agricultural use, apiaries, things of that nature, they don't need to be screened. And then also something that came out in our discussions in our last week's meeting was the hidden costs of the taxpayers. Commercial solar operations are not commercially viable, but they're mandated by the state for Xcel and these companies to participate. And well, Xcel doesn't want to do this because they're losing money on it. So that the money that they lose gets passed on to the taxpayers in hidden rates. So that's another thing I think that I want the citizens to realize, that it's not just about agriculture. There's also cost to the taxpayers. And again, I encourage you guys to go watch the 3 hours of discussion we had on this topic, and hopefully some of those points will become more clear.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that. Denny?
Yeah, as much as I value the personal use of our acreage, small and large, and as much as I believe solar power generation is viable, when I study the details of our comp plan, I just don't believe it fits. And after our hearing at the work session, that even the possibility of negative impact on property values exists, I can't support it.
Mr. Carp?
Yeah, I had a few, we've had a lot of comments and talk about this, so I think the biggest thing I'm looking at here is that it's about the equipment used in a project that actually makes us want to or not want us to have a use in Grant, because we value our scenic road views. It's in our comp plan. So it's not solar. It's not about solar. It's about solar power and commercial solar power that will be generated and the equipment used to do that. And I think we need to focus on that. I think the council has done a pretty good job of that. The fact that this is a commercial use on a site that is the primary use goes against the ordinances. We have ordinances that don't allow this. That's written. That's something that's real. So that's the other issue. The memo issued by the applicant was trying to make this about solar power, I feel, and it's not. And it was happening again as the applicant spoke to again tonight. It's not about a person. It's not about an industry. It's about whether something like this belongs in Grant. And I think we got to keep our eye on the prize, and that's what it is. What the applicant says is also not fact. It's an opinion. I've had the applicant stand up here, I don't know, 3 times now, and they say, it's this, it meets the comp plan. Well, that's an opinion, and they're entitled to their opinion. They're not entitled to facts, and that's an opinion. That's not a fact. And even us, we have opinions, and we have to vote based on opinions of what we think that means. So some things are facts and some things are opinions. Those are opinions that we've heard from the applicant, in my estimation. The difference between solar power and these solar gardens and larger commercial installations is not different for Grant. That came up a couple times, and I don't know that, for us, it's no different. It's the same thing. So I don't know what the applicant was going with that. These installations, will never be farmland again. They won't be. It'll be deemed commercial site. If they ever tear them down, they'll just put up something else commercial, because that's what will happen. I don't know any business or any farmland around St. Paul that had a building put up on and was torn down and they farmed again. That doesn't happen, and it wouldn't happen here either. If these installations preserve farmland, then a home on the site would preserve it better. We have a 1 acre, an ordinance talks about 1 acre for the driveway, the barn, the garage, all that stuff. So we have lots of sites in Grant where the back part of the property is being farmed. So it still can be farmed, it still can be a homestead, we still get the tax advantages that the school district gets hockey players, and they'll appreciate that now, maybe. So, maybe more, I don't know. And anyway, so that kind of thing. So I think, I don't think saying that this is preserving farmland, so would anything. So I think that's kind of a canard. I don't think that's the best thing. Let's see, blah, blah, blah. Okay, several people with homes and large acres, okay, work with them. Grant will not benefit at all or minimally from any jobs created from building the solar commercial power plant. We don't get any jobs. There'll be some. I don't know how we're going to benefit from that. Obviously, agriculture, we get benefits from jobs. And again, this is not about a personal, it's not about a person. This is not about a person. This is not about solar. This is about the project. And I heard that said again today, and whatever. Also, preserving farmland while claiming this is agricultural use does not answer the question, what is farmland for? Is it for food, growing food? We had somebody came forward tonight, they were talking about having where they learn how to be in agriculture, which is great. And we're all for that in Grant. Also, Grant's a small community. Our goals are not to promote business or solar. Our comp plan states that we will develop rural residential. That's what it does say. Not what somebody says it says, but that is what it says. This plan provides revenue to the city. Our plan provides revenue to the city, the county, and the school districts. If we get to 5,000 people in Grant, we'll get gas tax money. We have ordinances that have been amended and set to guide us to this end. That's our goal. And this commercial solar use provides no or little tax revenue. That is a fact. We won't get no money, and we'll have to have it on the site. The visual installation would cause surrounding property values to decline. Common sense would tell you this. I just had something passed to me that actually somebody appraiser actually says that too, so that's good to see. Because it makes sense. And then again, all with no increased revenue to the city council, the school district. And as far as the applicant's proposed site for the project, because to me this wasn't about the site, again, it's not about the person. This is for all the Grant. If commercial solar was as important to Grant residents as stated by the applicant, then the recent election results would have been far different than they were. That's my opinion, and I think it was stated down here too by Jeff. The petition we have supports the project. It does. He's nodding his head no, but it does. A person, a spot, not the change to the ordinances. And what the residents or the neighbors want or do not want in the area is important, but the use would be to the whole city, and that's why what's written in the ordinances is what's important. It's not about what people think. It's not a popularity contest. Otherwise, we couldn't, it'd be a heck of a way to run a city. We're a republic. We're not a pure democracy. And many of the applicants' talking points, they're similar to other solar installations, and I guess I understand why they do that. Again, I understand why they want to do what they do. It's a business, and I can appreciate that. But I just do not think it fits Grant, and that's my opinion. Thank you.
Okay. My comments, hopefully, I'll try to keep them succinct as possible. The first thing I would do is encourage everyone who has an interest in this process to see our last meeting. Go right under the City of Grant. .us.com, I think will even lead you there. Go back down the page a little bit and you can stream that last meeting. This council probably put in, I know what I put in, probably a good 120 man hours of research in order to pull together everything we could find about large solar garden installations. They're actually a facility as stated under the Solar Garden Minnesota statute, I believe it's 214B. They're called a facility. They are not called a garden. They are actually a facility. I noticed that our applicant, Mr. Watts, did not address any of the case law that we found where Greenmark Solar and Goodhue County courts called these, Greenmark Solar all by themselves called it an industrial facility in order to produce industrial level electricity, which would then be fed directly to the grid. The other thing that was not addressed in those comments was the fact that we spent an awful lot of time being reassured by the applicant that the screening would be proper and no one would be able to see this. Well, wait a second. If we're shoehorning 8 acres of glass, steel, and wiring into a field and it's agriculture, why would we be worried about screening it? That seems anticlimactic, to say the least, and somewhat of a dichotomy to screen an agricultural use. I've never done that before in Grant. The petition that keeps getting referred to here, I'm a little bit tired of hearing about this petition and the overwhelming support for this. Let me read it to you. Here's what people signed. What we're discussing here tonight is a use table change so that every piece of A1 and A2 zone land in this city would be eligible. Wouldn't have it on there, but it would be eligible for applications, CUP applications, to put these 1 megawatt solar generating facilities. Okay? The petition that was circulated is quite a bit different than that. It doesn't say, would you like to rezone Grant or change the use table for approximately 75% of the city? It doesn't say that. It's not what it says. Here's what it says. We, the undersigned, support, urge the City of Grant to adopt an ordinance to allow for the 8-acre community solar garden on Joyce's Century Farm. So this was passed around with the assurance in the writing of it that they were only, as they signed this, supporting one possible project, not the rezoning of Grant to A1 and A2. So I find that disingenuous and kind of distasteful. That said, this is not about solar. We have, since 1978 in our comprehensive plan, in no uncertain manner whatsoever, supported solar on an individual basis. I can see solar installations from my house. Take some binoculars, but I can see them. And these are pretty large solar installations. And they're not only feeding their own home, they're feeding that back into the grid. So each individual homeowner, the reason that we have these larger acreage lots is so that individual homeowners can make these individual choices without impacting their neighbors, without impacting property values, so that they can follow the standards that are already set on these installations, so that they can contribute green energy if they wish to the grid, as well as power their own home. And we have always been there, and we continue to be there. And I think, from my perspective, that larger solar installations may have a place in Grant. But I think, and I intend to put a lot of thought into that, and I intend to look at what the applicant has given us in terms of other evidence, and I intend to be open-minded to that. And because the use itself, generating solar power, was never my problem. It still isn't my issue with it. The problem is where we're trying to put it, where we're trying to pretend through clever use of semantics and descriptive language that somehow it's a garden. Well, Greenmark Solar, in the case law that I provided you, clearly says what it is, as does Minnesota Statute 214B. It's a facility, not a garden. So, with that said, I will add, Mr. Schneider, if you'd like to add anything to this, sir.
Just to clarify a couple things for the record,
Please.
the document referenced by the applicant was sent in to the city this afternoon, approximately 3 o'clock. It was a report, if you will, by Kirkland Appraisals that dated to 2017. And since it was apparently created in 2017, one thinks that perhaps it could have been provided to the city earlier than 3 o'clock this afternoon. In any event, the report, it's not an appraisal as such, but the report has been distributed to you, and I'd encourage you to take a look at it. But the upshot of that claimed report is that an appraiser on behalf of his Canada-based solar client, claims no impact to sales based on, in that case, the presence of a solar array in North Carolina. A note for the record, just for housekeeping purposes, that the city council had collected some sale data that was local and more recent. I think it dated to this year and last year from sales in the, I think, North Branch area. And council, at its last meeting, reviewed that data and concluded that it was suggestive that houses and properties adjacent and near to solar arrays both saw a discount for purposes of sale, but also studiously avoided displaying the presence of the solar arrays in their marketing material. And so that was the evidence that was in front of the council at that time. There's been some later submission, and the applicant has asked that this be submitted to the council, and so it has been submitted. But I think under the circumstances, the council is free to reach the conclusions it thinks most reasonable, given what it understood at that time, what it studied, and given the dated nature of the information provided today. Second, just housekeeping item, there was some documentation and other materials provided both by the mayor and by Councilmember Carr. I want to note for the record that that information has been given to the clerk and is made part of the record and incorporated into the record by reference. And that is all I have. And so I'd ask for council action on this.
Okay, very good. And I'm going to go ahead and ask for council action on this. Or Mr. Carr, sorry.
Can I have 3 minutes? I have to take my boy.
No, you can't. The public hearing's already taken place. I want to hear from Mr. Carr.
What about the people? Aren't we here for the people?
There have been 3 public hearings on this, sir. We are here for the people, but we're not going to entertain it.
You have an
Okay.
agenda here, and
Okay.
it's obvious.
If you can have a seat, please, Mr. Carr.
Yeah, and I just want to mention one other thing, because this just keeps getting brought up, and I want to make sure we all understand it. The applicants came forward and said, our application solves all your problems. Just pass ours, and everything we say that we should do in our application, and you won't have solar everywhere. It'll be fine. You'll only have 3, or you'll have 2, and this and that. We'll only do this acreage. So they were, I don't know, trying to do our job for us. Basically, they came in with the application, they said, just do this, and it'll be okay, and not looking at what we really have to look at, that to truly be arbitrary and capricious would be pass something where very few people could do this, if this is something that we up here at the table think we should do.
Let the people decide. You guys are here for the people.
Sir, relax, please.
So anyway,
You relax.
Please, sir, please.
so if we did that, so that's not our job, that's not how the system works. We come forward here and we, as a city, as a council elected by the people, decide what we should do and what's best for
Well, maybe we
Grant.
should
Not
have
an applicant
Sir,
coming in,
please.
telling us how it should be, and that fixes it. So I just want to make sure on the record that we state that just because they came forward, applied for that, if they don't get that text amendment passed, it's not because we didn't look at what they said. It's not because we didn't hear. It's because we don't agree.
So how much you
And
guys get paid out to do this?
we're sitting up here
You're real estate.
trying to
Mr. Mayor,
decide. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to interrupt.
Yeah,
If that happens again,
yeah.
I suggest that this meeting be recessed and that man
You
be
don't have
removed.
to ask me, I'll leave, because you guys are a scam.
Thank you.
That's sad. Okay. Mr. Carr, did you have further comments? Did you have further comments? Good night, sir.
Yeah, good night, you have a nice.
Good night, sir. Thank you.
So anyway.
Wow.
So that's why we sit up here and decide based on the rules, not personally or whatever. So I think we've done a good job of that.
Yeah.
I just want to bring that up because the application and the suggestions that were brought forward are not how our city runs. That's all.
Well, and you know what? It's funny. We just had a gentleman here who was quite animated, and apparently there's some sort of a secondary thing going on here that none of us are quite aware of. I will point to the city of Scandia, who put in 20 megawatts of this, And then last year had a work session and decided, nope, no more. We're all done. We've done our part. They repealed their solar garden resolution and their solar garden rules and replaced them with, lo and behold, almost exactly the same rules that the city of Grant has in order for people to put in residential solar gardens. So apparently Scandia is in on it too. But the point is that we are prepared to take action tonight. We have had 3 public hearings. We've had a 3-hour fact-filled special meeting several days ago, and I think that we are ready to take action, and I would entertain motions on this resolution.
Anybody?
Anyone?
Motion to approve the resolution denying the application for a zoning text amendment.
Do I have a second?
Hi, second.
All those in favor of said resolution, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Thank you, gentlemen. One moment, please. A little housekeeping here. Dave, do you want to have a quick conference with the clerk, please? Yeah. We're just going to take about a 2-minute break here, people.
I just wanted
We're going to have staff confer for just a moment. All right, gentlemen, we're going to, it sounds like the staff is done conferring. We have taken care of that little housekeeping issue there. We're going to move right forward into, under unfinished business, a consideration of resolution 2019-01, the amended CUP application for construction and operation of the ice arena. And I believe Mr. Rogaszewski is here. If you want to present or talk about any of the new information we've received, Mr. Rogaszewski, please approach. Oh, Jennifer, sorry. I didn't know you had anything.
I know, I just.
We never know.
Is that okay, Alice?
We never know.
Okay. Well, I like to keep my own toes.
Yeah, you're good at it.
All right. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, before you this evening, we have a continuation of the conversation that began in January with respect to the request for an amendment to the existing conditional use permit for the athletic field use that is out at the Matamidi High School campus. So as you noted, I did a full presentation at the last meeting, so I'm not going to do that again. But what I do have is just a short PowerPoint, so I don't know if we need, oh yeah, we're gonna have to switch that over. Brad, could you do it? 'Cause I'm kind of black. You just have to, there's a little button that switches it in the middle, kind of. There you go.
You got it.
All right, so just for the benefit of those that are in the audience this evening and perhaps looking at or watching it at home, the applicant this evening is ranked 2. The property owner is the school district, and that is not proposed to change as part of this application. The property is located on the existing Matamidi High School campus. It is zoned and guided A1. The property or the portion of the property that would be affected based on the proposed project is approximately 4 acres. And the request is to amend the current conditional use permit. So it is not a new conditional use permit, it's to amend it. Again, I'm not gonna go through this too much, but I just wanna make sure that folks who are watching know there's no subdivision that's actually proposed as part of this project or the proposed amendment. It's really basically a private nonprofit that is proposing to construct and operate the ice rink, but the school will continue to own the property. That is why they are a joint party to the application this evening. We did hold a public hearing, and then it came forward to you at the last meeting. We had a couple council members that were missing as a result of that. You continued the conversation to tonight to make sure that all 5 of you had the opportunity to take a look at it. If you recall, during that discussion, there were some questions that came up that you requested of the applicant. As a result, actually, the applicant went back and provided you with some additional information to answer some of those questions. So that is really the focus of the presentation tonight, which is really that supplemental information that was provided to you. So there, as I noted, there were several items, but there was an event and management traffic flow plan, if you will, that was provided by Traffic Impact Group. There was a demolition cost estimate that was based on the conversation at the meeting where it was requested of what would the cost be if something happens and the nonprofit, the Bring To, is no longer operational. What would it cost to tear the facility down? So that was provided to you. There was a potential area identified for additional parking and a site plan associated with where that could be located in the event it is determined that additional parking is needed. One of the key issues that we talked about was the pedestrian connections and how pedestrians would connect and access overflow parking areas. That was particularly as it related to events. So when there was a large event and they get closer to that 600 or 1,200 occupancy perspective, if folks have to park in those overflow spaces, how do they walk between them essentially safely and not on the private or not on the narrow driveway? There was a question about the lighting plan and then also making sure that those paths were lighted, because obviously much of the activity will occur in the middle of the winter, and as we are all aware, it gets dark quite early. There was a question with respect to fire services and whether there was additional cost as a result of the ammonia, et cetera, associated with the project. You've received an email identifying that. A second copy, or maybe a third copy, I'm not sure, of the ground lease was provided to you as well for ease. And then we did receive a letter from the superintendent that outlined and answered some of the questions you had with respect to the responsibilities of the school district. I'm not going to go into every document that was provided, but I did think that it would be helpful if you could see the site plans. So this site plan is the site plan that was submitted to you with the addition of that red area where they've identified a potential area where another parking lot could be constructed. Based on what they have identified here, there's approximately 76, 75 parking stalls that could be added to that area. Staff would note, and I haven't done a full review of it, but as you noted in the previous staff report, until it's operational and we know if there's 1,200 people that are actually coming to the site, or 1,200, up to 1,200, if the overflow parking works, then this actually probably is not needed, particularly if you look at the superintendent's response of also using the middle school parking lot. So if all of those are, just based on staff's number count that we have done, there actually is probably adequate parking between all of the parking spaces without the addition of this. So that's just something for you to consider, especially if that third overflow parking option enters the mix. With respect to the walkways and the pedestrian ways, the applicant put together this graphic, which the colors are coded to denote what are existing paths and which paths or connections that would have to be made in order to make those connections between the overflow parking areas. So you'll see that the orange is the existing path. There are existing lights that also are along that pathway, and that the blue locations are what would need to be installed as part of the project to make connections to those overflow parking areas. So you'll note here that if this is constructed and becomes part of the conditions of the conditional use permit, that there would be a off-road sidewalk connection for pedestrians to go between all those spaces. This plan is the photometric plan that demonstrates the lighting and how that would work. The major takeaway from this is also the bollards, if you will, that would light the pathway to make sure that folks would actually know where the path is, would be able to walk between those overflow parking areas, is the main takeaway. There's a lot of numbers that reflect the photometric light spillage, if you will, and really what it demonstrates is they comply with our ordinance with respect to that. So the secondary is really the fact that those pedestrian ways are lit. So in summary, really, there's a draft resolution before you this evening. There's the supplemental information for you to consider that hopefully answers some of the questions that you had. And in the permit draft this evening, you'll see that it's really an amendment to the existing permit, which there were conditions placed in 2006 and 2011. So this would be now the third set of conditions related specifically to the facility. So with that, that is my brief overview, and I'm happy to answer any questions. If there's anything that I don't know, because again, we did receive the information rather late in the game, Alex is here, and I'm sure his team is available to answer questions as well.
I'm just glad you made it, Jennifer. Just so happy that you're here.
Thank you.
Alex, do you want to come up? Jenna has.
I don't know if that's real, but I'm going to take it.
It is real. It is real. Alex, what I'd ask you to do is build upon what Jennifer has done here and describe the changes that you've made. You know what our concerns were when you left here last time, so if you could just address those for us, and then I'm sure we'll have some questions for you, especially our new members that didn't have the benefit of your presence previously.
Absolutely. Yes, for event management plan, and I think we did that, having and you saw the rationale from the traffic study. These are the same people that did the initial traffic study, so they've gone through 3 iterations now when we asked them to develop that event management plan. So different, a little bit different than what we talked about last time, using both the entrance to the high school, middle school, as well as that's a signaled entrance, as well as the unsignaled entrance with the cop directing traffic out there. And we would be in charge of all the costs associated with that, getting people to direct the traffic, as well as the use of a shuttle bus, because that middle school lot is a ways away. But 114 spots, we thought that was important to have plenty of parking spaces. I know that was an issue. That was something that was brought up as well. And something that Nick discovered as well, that there would be the option just south of the rink to add those additional spaces, which I think are invaluable. They're so close to the arena. And with regards to the sidewalks, you saw from the superintendent's letter that we'd be adding a lot of sidewalks. And I did walk in between the quad fields, and that's all paved there in the orange. So there's no dirt at all. And they have lights along the whole thing there. And so we'd be proposing to do the same thing, right from the corner, the lower left-hand corner, the southeast corner,
Gotcha.
southeast corner, and then all the way down in between the fields, and then all the way down to the Wildwood lot there, so people wouldn't
Alex,
be
I'm
walking
going to
that
stop you
street.
for just a second. In between the quad fields there, to the east of the, if you call it the upper portion of the cross, that's never been paved. That was paved recently?
Excuse me, where?
If you start just dead center in the middle of those quads and
Go
walk
to
to
the
the
right?
east,
Yeah,
okay, walk toward Wildwood, that was never paved. That's paved now?
it is paved, yep. I've
Okay.
walked it.
That was one of my questions for you. Okay, good enough. It must have been done when my kid wasn't playing baseball. All right.
I know it was, there's some Google Earth pictures as well that are unpaved.
Fair enough.
And so I walked it, yep. And there is, the sidewalk ends when you're walking through the tennis court lots there, but it is apportioned off with some yellow walking lines where it ends briefly and then picks up sidewalk a little bit. And then we'd have to add sidewalk on the left-hand side going into the middle school lot. Now there is, so if the kids, if they're parking, they go to school up by the black lot there, they walk all the way down. There is a crosswalk down there, and there is a sidewalk that takes them into the middle school lot as well. But we thought it would be a good idea because if you're parking in the middle school lot and you're walking to the rink, it's probably a low probability that you're going to go way out to the outside there and come back. So we thought that would be a necessary provision to add. Also, with regards to maintenance, so again, going back to the no cost. So we would be in charge of the cost for installing the sidewalks and then maintaining as well. So that means keeping them clear, keeping them plowed, make sure the lights are operational and all those different things, everything that goes along with maintaining sidewalks. With regards to the demolition costs, Nick is here and he can talk about those. Fire loan companies, they've been around for a long time. This is what they do. He knows the depth of the project, he knows everything that goes into it. 196 grand to knock the whole thing down, get it back to dirt, and back to square one. Also, you saw in the superintendent's letter that she was satisfied based upon the quote that she got and based upon the $500,000 escrow that would be enough in the event that something goes wrong. So I think that's a powerful one as well. The site plan, I just want to touch on briefly, or excuse me, the lighting plan. Mr. Carr, I think you talked about it last time. On the back side, you'll notice that there's only a couple lights, 2, 3, I think there might be 4 on the back side, and they're all the downward, they're the figure B, or fixture B. So it's all the downward facing lights, so we won't have the strobe situation. And again, those would be emergency exits on the backhand side there, so people wouldn't be going in and out where you get the strobe effect for the people in the back there. The email from Terry Fisher, the fire chief, I think is pretty self-explanatory. And then you had the ground lease, and I know you guys will have some questions on that, but before we get going on the ground lease, I just wanted to point out one thing in paragraph 9 on page 10. I forgot about this portion, and when I was reviewing it for this meeting, I forgot that there was 2 components that are pretty advantageous to the school district. One, they would get a 5% break on ice time, so the hourly rate for the ice time, so an advantage to the school district, as well as we're not allowed to rent ice to outside groups within 30 minutes of school starting and within 30 minutes of school ending, to ensure that our students, that Montemeade High students, have the ability to get in their cars and get out without having to, people coming to practice, and to avoid that traffic confusion. And then with regards to parking, Mr. Mayor, I know we talked about this last time, having 1,200 people there and having max capacity and having that on a regular basis. And so, I agree with you. I think there's that initial buzz, and we'll have that going through, no doubt, and I hope it lasts for as long as possibly can, right? But just for an example, we had a game on Thursday against Hermantown. So Hermantown's number 1 for Class A, and we're number 6, so big game for us. And our side of the stands was pretty full, and their side was pretty sparsely populated. I'd say we had about 800 people in the building. And so that's a huge game for us, so 800 people. So I think it would be, initially I would agree with you that there'd be the excitement and a lot of people would show up all the time. But I think that having the max capacity all the time would be on a yearly basis, maybe 1 to 2 times in that range for our really big games. Like, for example, tonight, if we're playing St. Thomas at home instead of at St. Thomas, we would probably have a big crowd there tonight.
Missing a game, are we?
Yep, big game tonight for the boys.
Just want to check.
That's right.
Okay.
And then, so Superintendent Duffrin's not here tonight, but I think her letter speaks for herself, and we appreciate her support. I know Bill Manazzi's here from the school district as well, and so they've been great allies with this and helping us work through issues, and happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Very good. Thank you, Alex. It looks like you have pretty comprehensively covered the questions that we had, the concerns that we had at that last meeting, and I appreciate you, number 1, allowing us to move forward to this meeting so that our new council members could be here and have some input into this process. I do appreciate you agreeing to that, and your entire group agreeing to that. John, would you like to start? Any questions for us right out of the box? You can certainly have another bite at the apple, but if you've got something now.
Sure. I was reviewing this when I was on the planning commission, and I think that's when we had the big stack. And I think I mentioned that I read the whole thing. So it's nice to see the changes. And I think one of the things that I asked before was, is there another lot you can put closer to add some spots? And it looks like you can, and you did. So that's a very good thing. And then just picking the lights that you have for the paths and having them down lights as opposed to, you could have done something else. So that's a good thing. So you're being very thorough in what you're trying to do, and I applaud you for that. Thank you.
Yeah, I second those comments. I mean, with all the work that you've done and all the preparation and all the, the work that you've done to meet our concerns, I think kind of put us in a position that, to deny this would be arbitrary and capricious. So.
Wow. It's only your first meeting.
Nothing like letting the cat out of the bag there. All right. Anything else, Jeff, or that finishes it up? All right. I'm just going to go down the line here. Denny, any concerns? Any questions for Mr. Orgoszewski or his team?
We appreciate your patience and your diligence and your attention to detail. I think you've addressed every question we have. We have multiple authorities in this that have signed off, and in areas and arenas that people at this table know very little.
Thank you. And I wouldn't be anywhere. I got a great team here helping me out. So,
gentlemen.
We know that. Tom, what do you got for us?
Yeah, there was a lot of paper.
tired of reading.
And a lot of work done. You know, how it turns out, you know, we don't know yet.
Great.
So I think it's good. I think you did your homework. I think you went through a lot of work, you know, so I hope it all comes out to the way you want it, because it was a lot of work. I think in the big scheme of things, this is a use the school can use. It's on a school site. It doesn't extend sewer and water into Grant. It's already, you know, there. It has a lot of really positive things for the community, and applaud you guys for trying to raise the money to get it done. So, and good luck with that.
Thank you.
The only concern I had was the CUP issue.
Right.
We talked about this before. We've had CUP where it doesn't happen and it just runs with the land.
Right.
You have an exit strategy for almost $200,000 to tear it down.
Yeah.
But what is the exit strategy if it doesn't get built? That's my concern sitting up at the table. I don't know if that's something we should do or not do. I'm just bringing it up for discussion with the council because it's happened. And it's more of a, you know, we don't have to have it in there, but it's just something I was concerned with. And then the only other thing that I've been talking about for 18 years, or whatever it's been since the school district bought the property, I keep saying trees. Every time I say trees, they say, oh yeah, 6 to 8 foot high ones. No, little ones. Plant them now because they'll be huge later, right?
Okay.
And that's what I see. If you go back a couple of slides up there, if we go back to the very first slide where it showed the sidewalk. Oh, there. Oh, one forward. There you go. That one. Okay. If you see along the bottom, if you see where the blue line is way over to the right, there's like a little barrier of pine trees there.
Yeah.
Then it gets a little sparse, and then it gets sparser. As we've gone through with the quads, with the school, the new Wildwood School, with the first buildings out there, I've said, go plant a bunch of trees to the north, shield the residents, and or to the south, I've mentioned that. Now, I don't know if they've gone out and they're only this big and I can't see them on the aerial. But in amazing fact, we have order forms for small trees sitting right there on the table.
Saw that.
And if you could get a few hockey players or whatever to go plant. Now, one thing to remember, they're going to be ripping up 12.
Yep.
So we got to make sure, and you don't want them under the power lines. But if you could get a bunch of little trees planted for a couple $100, so when your project finally goes in, that would really do a lot, I think, to shield it from the new residents that'll be living across the street.
Okay.
So I think it'd be a really good plan.
It's not going to shield the sound, though, like we learned the last meeting.
Well, I'm not a sound expert, so I don't know. Wow, okay. But at least it'll look like you're trying.
I watched it. I watched that.
Did you watch that?
Yeah.
Okay. But at least, I think it's something to think about. But as far as the CUP exit strategy, if the council, I mean, if we don't want to do that, that's fine. I don't know if I'm necessarily set on that, but is there any thought, Mr. Mayor?
One of the questions I was going to ask staff was the exit strategy for vacating the CUP and the time frame. We have done that before as a council. We have looked at inactive CUPs and we have vacated those CUPs as we go to clean up our books, and that is a standard housekeeping thing, and that's one of the things that I would be talking to the professionals about, getting an opinion on from them. Tom, do you have anything else, or otherwise I'm going to kind of launch into just a couple of questions? Okay, excellent, thank you, great comments here. Alex, you know me, I gotta kind of get the job done here. All of that lighting that I see on all of the paths, I would really appreciate it if you would put that on the north side of those paths for the most part, and point it down up when it gets up here in the quads. If you pointed that down to the north, because it's so much distance to 75th, but down here on the right hand side as you get to Wildwood, if you could point those lights, those marker lights, to the north. There's quite a bit more tree coverage to the north. Go back one to the lighting. There you go.
Good point.
See the ones on the path that almost touches Wildwood parking lot there?
Yep.
Down the right-hand side.
Yep,
Yeah.
I see it.
If
So
those
those are-
lights, if those bollard lights down there were pointing north instead of south across 75th, all those nice new houses at the Gateway Trail that we just approved their plat for.
Yeah.
Okay, if those lights are pointed north, those folks aren't going to see those very well. Okay, so everything down there that is close to that, like up to the rink and then maybe even over to the middle of the quads, if that stuff could point north, And then as you go further toward the school, if it could point south, because we're not gonna really have anybody to see it over there. You know what I'm talking about? I'm just talking about a smart lighting plan so that that new development, they don't look out a window every night and see those lights, or at least have a minimal impact with those lights. And Tom's point about the trees is very well taken. Those hockey players need to get out of those skates and learn how to walk. So get them out there digging holes. Good for them.
Will do.
Trees.
Will do.
Get them out there digging holes. Tom's point is very well put, and I would encourage you to be good neighbors and get that done. Leaving the lighting for a second, Alex, let me go to your parking here. You know, I think that new 76 slot lot there, for lack of better, is a great idea, and I hope that you guys can do that quicker. The one thing that I'm concerned about, I'm going to ask Brad real quick. Brad? I have your attention just for a second here. What do we have there? Have we looked at their parking plan in terms of the existing parking lot, the closest to the proposed hockey arena? How many, and can we influence the number of handicap parking places there as a result of the arena being in place there at some point in the future? Because if there's only 6 and sometimes I'll run up to Wildwood, or I'll run in there to grab kids or something at the high school, and I don't think there's very many handicap spots there. Do you guys know? And can we mandate more? That's what I'm saying.
Well, I think typically, you know, there's a handicap spot designed for every 20 spaces or 25 spaces. I don't know the exact number of the spaces that we have here. And
But that's the formula for every 20 or 25.
typically, and sometimes it's based on the size of the building as well, so.
Jennifer, do you have, hang on a second, Alex.
So when we went through the elementary school approval process and the conditional use permit process, we had to do a detailed parking ratio plan of ADA accessible to standard parking spaces.
Okay.
And if my memory is right, I'd have to go back into my files, but if my memory is correct, we actually allowed some of the spots to be for compact cars so that we got actually a couple extra.
I remember that. Yeah, right on the ends of those, on some of those. Alex, did you have something to add to this?
Oh, I was just going to say there's, on our diagram, it says there's 203 spaces there.
203 spaces there, so we divide that out by 20, we've got what, 10?
10 spaces.
I think it's actually 8 ADA stalls, if my memory is right.
8 ADA stalls?
Which met the ratio that was required.
Yeah, no.
However, in the new spot, because you're adding additional, because there's equivalencies based on the proposed structure, in the new spot, then you would require, and they could accommodate it within the existing parking lot because you're using both. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and look, gentlemen, obviously the ADA is federal law, and I can't influence that. I can't tell you what to do on that. Federal law rules in this case. You know how many grandparents are going to be there. You know what's going to happen, and you're going to need more of those spots if you can get it in there. Up to you, but that's kind of what I would think there. Let's talk about your traffic study for just a second, and your special events study, Alex.
Yep.
My concern on this is just very simply that expense. It isn't rocket science to have a guy out there directing traffic, and I read this, they don't want people just taking rights there because then you've got the possibility of dangerous U-turns happening very, very frequently. So you're talking about putting out some type of a traffic warden, whether that's a police officer or something else. And if I understand correctly, both this traffic warden, anyone else driving a shuttle bus, anyone else for security inside of the rink, is all going to be undertaken in terms of payroll, in terms of insurance and everything else by Rink 2.
Correct.
That is not a taxpayer operation, correct?
Correct, yep.
Grant's police contract with the school district will not be impacted in any way.
Correct. If they were Washington County guys, they'd be off duty.
You'd be off duty and you'd be hiring them on your dime, correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Perfect, thanks. Bear with me for just 1 second here, Alex. Okay, let me just read this real quick. The estimated cost for demolition of this structure would be $196,000. This includes complete demolition, removal of the structure, debris disposal at a licensed disposal facility et al. This estimate is based off today's prices for labor, equipment, and materials and does not include any inflation or reflect the cost of work completed in the future. Well, if inflation's 4% a year, we're talking about $7,000 approximately per year of inflation costs. Do we have any plan to put some sort of an escalator in this, Alex. Can you talk to that a little bit, or Mr. Fredalone, if you could talk to that a little bit? Up to you.
I
tell me.
believe Nick can speak to the amount for inflation.
Okay.
Well, if I knew what inflation was, I wouldn't have this job.
Yeah.
On average, prices increase with the normal inflation, 3%. One of the bigger factor for us is the diesel fuel. Price per barrel of oil, if that goes way up, it's going to go up a little bit more because that affects the trucking, which would be the demolition debris that gets removed from the site. Tipping fees at the demolition landfills are usually pretty consistent. So I think at the highest level, it would be 5% per year as an inflation factor, but
okay. Well, with that said, and that's quite, thank you very much. That's quite honest. I wonder if you would, Alex, if any of the other council has any indications here or suggestions here, I'm open to them. But some sort of an escalator or some way to make sure that this gets taken care of if it goes up in cost, so that the school district and of course the taxpayers are not tagged with that. You know what? That's what I have. That popped out to me, gentlemen. And I'll reiterate what some of the other people have said here. You've done an awful lot of work over years. Over years, you've done this work. And as long as we're here discussing it, let's talk for a second about the environmental aspects of this and what's actually going to be happening here. This site is going to be excavated down to 25 feet. Is that correct?
Yep.
Down to 25 feet. Whatever is found there is going to be safely disposed of. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then we're going to bring in clean fill under MPCA standards, bring in clean fill and refill that excavation, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then we're going to build this on top of it with a vacuum system, very similar, if not the same, to Wildwood School, which evacuates anything that could be underneath there in terms of volatile organics or gases of any sort will be vented out the top, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And as you start to build this, the MPCA will be on site to evaluate your efforts and to give final approval. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, real good. So this city has, as we talked about and kind of jokingly a little bit before, we've got 4,000 people. We're in a building that has no indoor plumbing, and our yearly budget is right around $1.2 million. So at some point, we need to look at the state where we all pay our taxes, everyone in this room, to provide the expertise to do the environmental planning and environmental permitting for us. Okay? All Grant's really going to be doing is a grading permit. Where are you moving the dirt? That's about our responsibility at this point. So I just want to reassure the citizens that not only is there a environmental plan here, but it's being overseen by people that have no stake in a hockey arena. They have absolutely no stake in this hockey arena whatsoever. They come from downtown St. Paul. We had a gentleman up here who testified tonight, or actually applied tonight for the Planning Commission, who spent years with the MPCA. Great guy. He's got multiple degrees. These are the people who are going to be organizing and overseeing this type of project. And that's why I can go ahead and, I'll let the cat out of the bag, vote for it with a clear conscience. Because the environmental aspect is taken care of, the taxpayer impact is taken care of, the overall public use of this cannot be debated. We need it. These kids getting up at 5 o'clock and going to the lumber yard or wherever it is in Stillwater, it's just unconscionable in this district. I realize we're not that large, but we should be able to get this done. So that's where I stand. That's where the rubber meets the road for me, gentlemen. So anything else? Staff? Mr. Schneider? Mr. Rock?
You brought up, or maybe Mr. Carr brought up a good point about maybe having a certain number of years that the CUP could be
Thank you very much. Thank you. If you'd like to pose that question to staff about vacating CUP first so we can learn about the process.
And Jennifer, maybe my memory's not that good, but I think we had talked about that and a different meeting when we were in the Planning Commission when we were on that. And
At the Planning Commission, we talked about 10 years.
Yes, right.
I'd offer this perspective as well in terms of having no restriction on there. I think it's a little different than the CUPs that you're talking about vacating, because in those situations, they're residential lots in most cases, and they're the only CUP on there. They're the only condition on that property. Whereas on this property, there's multiple conditions being used for multiple opportunities. So even if ours isn't there, the CUP is not going anywhere, and it's still being used, purportedly for a long time. And so I think that would give me a little bit more comfort in terms of, if this portion didn't work out, there's still multiple other uses there.
For the building?
Yeah.
Correct.
And
No.
I will say, I think there is an insulating factor there, to put it that way. There's an insulating factor of having this be already on a site governed with multiple CUPs, governed with another taxing authority in charge of it. So I understand your point about the insulation, that provides this protected use. And frankly, I find it hard to believe you're gonna start digging holes without having the money in the bank, right?
And also, as you read in the ground lease, we're not allowed to. So we
Not
need.
allowed to, until you prove to the school district you have the cash available
Correct.
for it. Mr. Carr?
Well, I think we're getting to that, but what I'm talking about, if nothing happens. That's really what we're talking about. And because then it just hangs out there, just for CUP learning, they just don't go away.
Right.
When I first came in here, there were CUPs that haven't been used in 20 years, and they were still out there. Oh, Kim's got her hand up.
Yeah, thanks,
Mr.
Tom.
Mayor and
Kim,
council
go
members, I
ahead.
think the clarification that he was trying to make is this is an amended CUP.
I get it.
So it's not a new CUP, and if worse came to worse, the city could vacate the amended CUP, and what that requires is a public hearing.
The portion of
Portion.
the amended CUP, we
Yes.
would just be getting rid of the portion, and frankly, the use would remain. There's still gonna be kids running on this field, there's a baseball thing right there, and, the baseballs will still be going over the backstop, so.
And what that requires is a public hearing, notice of a
Oh,
public hearing.
and that's fine. I just bring it up because it's a big use. We don't know if it's gonna happen. And I like to clean up paperwork without a lot of city expense.
Yeah.
Having a public hearing, all that all costs money. A lot, but it does.
Agreed. Danny?
Oh,
Sorry, Tom, I didn't realize you weren't done, Tom, go right
So I
ahead,
have
please.
another topic I'd like to talk about, just briefly, and actually was,
My response is to this one.
go ahead, do that real quick. Yeah, you certainly
I
can.
think as long as the city has the ability to vacate that, maybe we're complicating that thing too much, but.
Yeah, that's fine.
Jennifer, hang on one second, let's get the staff in first, Tom, and then we'll have you
I
launch
just want
there.
to add one comment, which is, in the CUPs that we've had prior, that we placed a condition of you must, pull a building permit by a certain date. The challenge from staff, typically it's come along with statements, something of the nature of must pull a building permit within 2 years or whatever the date is. And if not, you need to come back before the council and request for it to be extended. And from a staffing perspective, as we've all talked about numerous times, there's not a lot of us. And so keeping up on those things is incredibly difficult from that perspective of when did the year transpire? What does that actually mean? When did it get fully executed? When did it get recorded? All of those questions start to come into play. So I just offer that to you of it's created a couple challenges with some of them that we have done that with.
And let me just chime in on that. This is a little bit of a different beast. When that money comes together, or the private funders come together, I'm pretty sure we're going to hear about it. And if it doesn't come together, I'm pretty sure I'm going to hear about it. So, yeah, that we may be, as Danny has eloquently put it, overcomplicating this. Tom, go ahead.
I just had one other thought on the demolition, and I thought we talked about the, costs going up and all that. But we've had it happen before where people have gone bankrupt. And then what happens then? Now, we're past, you build the building.
Right.
No hockey rinks have ever gone bankrupt, have they?
There have been some.
They have been some.
Yep.
Okay, so, I was conversing with Mr. Snyder. Mr. Snyder, would you like to make a comment on that, or should I continue, or?
Well, I think if you could fully outline what.
Fully
your
outline what
concern-
I'm saying, so
your concern is.
the hockey rink would get built, it would go bankrupt, can you tear the building down? Now, of course, at that time, if you were bankrupt, that probably wouldn't happen. And then what would the issue be? It's on school property. Whose problem is it? The district's. Are we gonna pay, and then what we've heard through the whole process, I'm just saying, is that it's not the taxpayer's problem. Well, if it's the district's problem, it is the taxpayer's problem. So that would be my concern. The other issue is you could do a letter of credit, but that's might be an awful long letter of credit. We're talking about things that aren't gonna happen, right?
Oh, for
But
sure.
if they do, that's what we're here for, is to make sure we have remedies now, because we're prudent and not to wait. So that's my comment.
I agree with you, and that's a concern of mine. I'm a taxpayer. I pay the taxpayers pay the taxes for the school as well, and I don't want it to come back on, let alone myself, but the other members of the community, for sure. And I think that safeguard's in place with the $500,000 escrow, and that was the purpose of getting the quote from Mr. Fradlow. Now, if I was on the school district, I would probably repurpose the building as opposed to tearing the whole thing down and make a different use out of it. You get a free building and you can make whatever you want on the inside. But that's a different thought for a different time. But I think the numbers that we've provided, if they deem it that, hey, this is it, we want to get rid of it, they've got that money there to get rid of it, and I think it's within the budget that they have there.
So it would be money in an account.
It would be, that money would have to be in place before we started, so that would be part of the funding component.
That's, yeah, if I may. You've got the $500,000 escrow that was mandated by, I believe, either the school district or the Minnesota Education Association.
School district.
School district.
Correct.
To put $500,000 in escrow.
Correct.
It was my understanding that that escrow was only to be used in certain instances, and can you detail those instances for me?
I'd have to take a look. Do you remember exactly where it is in there?
I don't, but I thought that the
I think it's
demolition
only-
of the building was a completely separate amount to be held in escrow. It wasn't part of the 500,000, or your understanding is the 196 was part of the 500?
Yeah, correct, yeah. My estimation is that's what that $500,000 is for.
Okay, so if that $500,000 is sitting in there, Mr. Fradlone is telling us right now, today's pricing, it costs $196,000 to take that building down. Tom, what you're really asking for then is some sort of an escalation clause in that escrow held in order to up that amount for demolition, is that correct?
Well, 500,000 would be way more than that, but I just want to make sure, we've seen it happen before. Again, we're into the minutia right now, but that's what we do.
Yeah.
I
But
get
so
it.
if that is, if that
That's
is
what
for
that-
demolition,
Correct.
I can't confirm that right now, but if it is, then that would satisfy.
And the $500,000 has to be in the school district's coffers
Right.
bank account proven before you break ground, is that
Correct,
correct?
that's part of the,
Okay,
that's part of the
as long as
financing.
that's
part.
correct, then I take
we're-
away
we're-
my concerns.
We're too far down in the weeds here.
That was my understanding.
Yeah, we're too far down in the weeds here.
Okay.
Anything else from staff? Dave? Brad? Jennifer? Council people? John? Jeff? Danny? Tom?
Thank you.
Nope,
You good?
no, thank you, I'm good.
All right. These guys put a lot of work into this, a lot of money. They sound like they have every possible contingency covered, environmentally, financially, CUP-wise, parking-wise, lighting-wise, traffic management plan. You've answered the questions to my satisfaction, and it sounds like you've got the satisfaction of the council in terms of the concerns about the project. It's good for the community. How else do you put it? It's good for the community, so. Looking to entertain motions on this, I guess.
Make a motion to approve resolution 2019-01, amended CUP for ice arena.
I would second.
And we have Denny seconding that. All those in favor of the motion as stated, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any noes? Congratulations, gentlemen. Congratulations.
Good luck, gentlemen.
Go get them.
Go get some money.
Get some trees right over there.
Hey, get your tree stuffs right over there.
Get some dough.
Congratulations. Get the money. Get the money.
Yeah, you're the other half. Good luck. Yeah.
Good luck.
Silent Bob.
And they all stand up. The whole
Thank you.
place stands up.
Goodness.
Get the money.
Thank you.
You're gonna go catch the end of that hockey game.
I think several people are.
I don't know what the deal is.
I'm out of cough drops, sorry.
No, I had a whole pocket full. I got them in the car.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
I think I'm good.
Ken? Yeah. I'm good.
Still gotta finish our meeting though.
Thank you. I
Let
had a
the
whole
room
pocket
clear
full
out,
before.
then we'll finish up our meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't remember about that.
Gentlemen.
You sure on the demo thing? I didn't remember. There's a lot of paper.
The 500,000 was for the,
For demo.
they could hold.
Yeah,
Now I
as long-
remember.
yeah, then it's not a problem.
Okay.
I wasn't sure.
Let's wait for the meeting to come back into order here, gentlemen.
So as long as, let's flesh that out when you get here. You can't read everything.
Still got some
There was a
important
lot of
business.
stuff. Yes.
Shut the door.
Feels good, doesn't it?
It does.
Kind of does. All right, let's go back into session here after our slight break to let the building clear, and we will go ahead and start with staff updates. Do we have any updates from staff? Kim, Jennifer, Brad, Dave?
We do from Brad.
Well, we do from Brad, but that's the second thing here, so we'll call on him in a second. If we had anything general for updates, nothing yet? Okay, real good. Brad, we're going to jump right into your amending the policy for special assessments. You're on.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I think I provided some information for you regarding the current assessment policy and some previous policies that were included with your packet. I think they go all the way back to 2005, and I think the latest one is in the year 2010. Some of the things that have come up during our neighborhood meetings, and maybe I should back up a little bit. So each year we have a CIP for maintenance, roadway maintenance dollars that are designated through our CIP to certain neighborhoods within the city. And so each year we engage those residents with a newsletter and try to hold a neighborhood meeting and just talk about what is planned for those streets and the potential for doing I would say, a major street rehabilitation project. And so through that process, we've been using the current assessment policy to garner a resident within the areas to champion a project to get a petition started for a major project. And some of the things that we've some of the things that we have gone through the process with and looking at the existing assessment policy doesn't necessarily jive with what the road or the paved roadway projects currently are. So the current amendment or the current assessment policy is specifically called out for gravel roads, and it doesn't really specifically call out for paved roads. And there's a few definitions I think we need to add to the amendment or to the assessment policy. And so I provided this information just to start the discussion with you folks and maybe bring a resolution back to the next meeting for an amended assessment policy. So I guess with that, I would open up the discussion to all of you to get some feedback.
Well, let's start this one block of concern or one block at a time. So first, let's look at number one, if definitions are an issue, because when homeowners get this letter or when we start passing around petitions, having clear definitions is key. That's one of the things we need to work on. Number two, what you're saying, if I understand you correctly, going further through this document, if I can just kind of set it up, is you're talking about the feasibility studies and how those feasibility studies are providing a stumbling block for those meetings that you're having. Can you talk about that for a second?
Sure. So right now, the onus is on the champion or the residents to pay for the initial feasibility report. And that's been difficult to get a resident to champion the petition and to take ownership of paying for the feasibility report. And so part of the amendment would include the city initially paying for the feasibility report for the areas with the thought that if a city or if a project would move forward, those costs would be then assessed back to these parcels as part of the project.
Sure.
Now, there's a potential issue if no petition is moved forward and a project doesn't move forward, and then the city would be on the hook for the cost of the feasibility report.
The reason, a little bit of background for the new members here, the reason that it's written the way it is right now, where the feasibility study, if it does not reach a certain amount, a feasibility study is paid for by the residents in most cases, is because we had some roads, and I'm sure Tom can talk about this in even greater detail, we had some residents on some roads who were proposing these petitions quite often, and we were doing these quite expensive feasibility studies, and nothing happened. It never occurred. So I guess what Brad is saying and what I'm feeling and looking at is we need to find a good balance there in terms of paying for these feasibility studies on a known schedule. So for example, every 3 years or so, I just throw that out there, okay, or every 6 years when the whole maintenance schedule comes around, Brad.
That's what I would suggest.
Okay, well, and we're looking for that from you. So first we have definitions. We need to figure out our definitions. Number two, we need to figure out feasibility studies, how to make it more palatable for the residents to get that feasibility study done, because we are asking a lot from one champion there. And frankly, I wonder if we can't streamline or help with that process a little bit from a city standpoint in terms of getting the information on the project out and getting signatories and that type of thing, either an electronic method or something like that. I'm just throwing that out there for you to kind of noodle that and think about that. So, I think those are really the two main things, if I understand you, that
It
you're
is.
pointing at here, isn't it?
It is. It's the cost of the initial cost of the feasibility report, and then just providing some more definition to the existing policy.
Okay, well, I'm gonna look at Tom here and see if he'll jump in, because he has a lot of history with this stuff. He can help.
Yeah, and I had a couple of things I was thinking about, but I think the first thing is the definitions. I think we ought to have three, in my opinion. One, overlay, and then the definition behind that would be overlay of 2.5, whatever inches, plus, before doing that, minor sub street, what is sub? What am I
So
trying-
a drilling, a coring?
No, just minor, what am I trying to say? We dig up parts of sections that are bad, or
Doing some
minor-
subgrade corrections.
Subgrade, that's the word, thank you, subgrade. Minor subgrade improvements, things like that. Okay, that'd be the first definition. Second definition would be mill and overlay, maybe a little bit better, possible milling, more subgrade, culverts, stuff like that, next step up. And then reconstruction, which is full-blown reconstruction. And I think we ought to put those in as definitions so we know what we're talking about with the residents. The second thing, I think I'd be in favor of paying for some of these feasibility studies. I do think before we pay for them, I think we ought to try to scare people a little bit, saying how much these are gonna cost with reasonable numbers. Because if they don't wanna do that, then why would we do this feasibility study? So I think we need to have some educated wags on what these costs are gonna be. And then if the residents still wanna go forward, that we pay for that, or pay for most of it, even paying for all of it. But at that point, they would be educated on what the cost could be, and then we'll fine tune it. But if we go forward without having that mechanism, then I think we could be wasting taxpayers' money. The other thing is, eventually, most of these roads are gonna get done. We'll get our money. It may be 10 years from now, 20 years from now. We'll get our money, but it's just gonna be down the road. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, so I think the way
Kim
that
has her hand
Kurt,
up.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I guess, Mayor and Council members, what we found the last 2 summers doing these neighborhood meetings, we have had a ton of interest. We get a lot of turnout for these meetings, and we've timed them where we're doing the seal coating prior to the seal coating meetings.
Right.
And the stumbling block has been the feasibility studies.
Okay.
So what we were looking at was kind of a maybe city cost share with
Sure.
these feasibility studies. And why Brad brought this all forward was kind of some direction that Brad could bring
Start
forward
moving
to
in.
the
Yes,
next
gotcha.
meeting. Was
Gotcha.
kind of looking
Gotcha.
at revising it, your direction to do that.
Brad, and Tom has provided us some very useful definitions here. An overlay, just for the newer members here, and perhaps other people don't know what an overlay is basically you're laying a new layer of fresh asphalt over the old asphalt. This has been done in the city before, and what's nice about Grant is if the citizen wishes to do that over their road, their choice. A mill and an overlay is where the actual milling machine goes over and cuts down probably 2 inches, Brad, 3 inches down to reach a better base for then an overlay to go over. So if your road is so broken up, but the underlayer of it has some structural rigidity left to it, you can mill it and then overlay over the top of that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That is correct.
So
Okay. and then
typically, it would be, the assessments would be for any major rehabilitation to a paved road. So
Right.
currently, the policy just strictly talks about gravel roads, and the cost of the feasibility is already in there, and so we can make some updates to that and
No,
to
you-
address some of Tom's concerns.
Absolutely. Well, and you've brought it forward in the perfect way for us to have a good conversation about this. But just one more on the definitions that Tom talked about. A reconstruction, Brad, if I'm correct, that's where the entire road is dug up, and actually the underlayment of the road, the actual structural rigidity consisting of gravel and other materials, are replaced or repacked before the road is actually relaid with asphalt. Is that correct?
Yeah, typically, there's 3 ways we've been preparing or redoing some paved roads. That's the overlay, which you talked about, the mill and overlay, where you're completely taking off the pavement surface and putting a new pavement surface over the old aggregate base. And then the reconstruction is actually reclaiming all the material, taking off the bituminous, putting on a new bituminous, and addressing any drainage concerns too that may be needed, such as a culvert or things like that. So.
The most comprehensive process that we get involved in on these roads is what you're saying is the reconstruction. Great. Now, you had talked about really quick about, and Kim pointed it out as well, you're running into problems with the feasibility study. I had said, well, every 3 years we would pay for it if they got 75%. I said 6 years because that's how our schedule runs. We do a 6-year rotating schedule on our roads, and they're ranked, and then we do that maintenance on a 6-year schedule. You had said you may agree with something like that. Can you tell me your thoughts on that?
Sure. Typically our CIP, I think right now is set up for a 5-year rotation. I think that plan is almost due either next year or the following year. I don't remember. But, typically what I would recommend is doing a feasibility report for all the roadway segments within that designated area for the CIP. It's always easier to provide for a street in the feasibility report rather than trying to amend it after the fact. So we could prepare the feasibility report, people could see the costs of the project. If they decided they didn't want to move forward at the time, the council decided to, they got a petition from another segment, we could move forward with that segment, but you could always use the feasibility report up to, probably 3 or 4 years when you have to start adjusting for costs, really. I mean, that's the thing that you have to start adjusting for, but you could easily do that with an amendment to the feasibility report. So I really think a 5 to 6 year rotation.
But you're talking about doing a feasibility, if I understand what you're saying, you're talking about doing a feasibility report on every segment of road within that CIP as a prelude to even collecting signatures on a petition or seeing whether or not people are interested.
Well, no, I still think we need the 35%. I don't think we would move forward with a feasibility report if we had no interest, right? I would still be in favor of getting the 35%. At least that would let us know that people are engaged and are willing to move forward with the street reconstruction project.
I understand that. You gotta have a little skin in the game, even if it's only a signature on a petition. I get that. That seems it seems expensive to me, but I think we need to start pushing this process forward, and people need to understand just on a basic level that their property taxes in the city have never fully reflected these projects needing to be done. You compare us against any other city's tax structure, we collect nothing near those other cities. Tom?
Well, yeah, and I think, again, to Kim's point, you want some direction. So I would say do the feasibility study for free. Just do it. Because we can always tweak it. They're how much? $3,000?
I think what it was in the previous policy was $300 or $3,000 per segment.
Yeah.
So it's rather difficult to say it's going to be $3,000 for the entire area.
We'd
right?
vote on it before you did it, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So,
right.
All right. So I would say do it. That way these people come. Something has changed in Grant since we even did that. A lot of people have done this.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not new anymore.
Not new anymore. It hasn't happened before. Things have changed.
We need to encourage it.
And we need to encourage it. Not only we need to encourage it, lots of people have done it. They've gone off the cliff, jumped, did it. They're probably very happy, Yep. So let's encourage more of it, because the more we can encourage it, the more that this basically road policy will be entrenched, which we kind of like. I mean, just it works, and the more that we can get our roads fixed to save us maintenance dollars that we can put into other roads.
With the 35% caveat, right, to make sure that we still have.
And scaring them, I'm using that word just as a kind of they need to know what the costs are going to be, so we do not waste our money. That being said, they can be retweaked and revised every so often without going in. Once you have the data, you can put it in there. So I would say we go back to doing that. That'd be my opinion. So.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with Tom to do that, as long as those can be amended. You said what, 4 years out they could be amended?
Yeah, it starts to get difficult as you get further away because of the pricing changes, and then you'd have to go back and update your pricing for the mock assessment rules that are typically part of the.
Well, you know us, we're going to be looking at that pricing, we're going to be trying to amend these things, but I think the definitions that we're looking at here, I think making some changes to this feasibility study, and I believe you also had some questions or wanted some direction on combining projects?
Yeah, so right now it's not real clear to the residents how projects would be assessed. And so if you took a look at the entire project CIP, there's some huge advantages for residents to be a part of a bigger project versus just looking at the cost of each individual segment. So I would prefer to look at it, as a cost, a project
Globally.
basis.
Yeah, right.
Versus assessing each parcel based on their segment.
Let me stop you for a second. If we address it on that global basis, that CIP global basis, and then we do our study based upon that, it's still going to be possible for us to segment that off if it becomes necessary, depending on the interest, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And so the project would be the project, right? So if there's 2 segments or 10 segments, the assessments would be based on a project.
Well, I'm not sure how much direction you actually need on that, other than it's common sense to do that as a whole and then section off if it becomes necessary to do so. Am I answering the question properly here?
Yeah, no, I think so. So the way the petitions have been working is we've tried to champion each street segment within the CIP to go out and get these petitions. And then, so it hasn't been real clear on a project basis. And so we've been struggling, I guess, with, and people have been asking about, well, how would this be assessed? Would it be assessed on a per project basis or not? And so I think the answer would be, no, we would take all the segments that are moving forward as a project.
The first price we should be providing, in other words, is that global price. And then if we don't get the buy-in, the price is gonna go up, and like Tom said, for lack of a better term, you kind of scare them and go, come together as a community, as a CIP
Right.
area, and get this done.
Because it's their advantage.
Because it's to their advantage and prices go down. The last thing I'd like to talk about, if there's nothing else going on, is this champion model that we're using right now. I would really, and I haven't put a ton of thought into it, Brad, but there's got to be a different way, if not a better way, at least a way that becomes more, even impersonal might be an advantage at this point. Because we do live on larger lots. Sometimes we don't even know our next door neighbors.
Yeah.
And we don't run into them too often. We've got trees in between us. And I wonder if we could come up with a different model to get people engaged in that a little bit. Whether it starts with the mailing, and then, I'd be willing to pay for self-addressed stamped envelopes to get out there,
Proactive approach. to
A more
getting-
proactive approach from the city's perspective. Do I want to spend a ton of money doing it? And am I going to lay it on these two or on you? No, but there's got to be some other way we can do that. If we paid a mailing service, we did something. I want guys to kind of brainstorm about this a little bit. Denny?
No, does that make sense? I've thought all along, having that initial charge be some individual is not the best system.
It isn't.
But does it make more sense, Brad, for you to choose the roads that make the most sense to do whatever, and then include in there, this is what it would be now? Chances are, if you wait 3 more years and now the road is crap, it's gonna be 50% more. It's gonna be double. Just to lay some things out for them.
Yeah, we certainly could
Or is
put
that
some,
just too damn much work to do?
right, we could certainly put on some escalators, like we were talking about earlier with inflation, right? 4 or 5% inflation
Or even that, or
factor.
you could walk
So
them
that
down
you-
the 3 scenarios. You could say, hey, if you wait too long, it's not a mill and overlay anymore. You're talking reconstruction. You could even do that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Don't we send out letters? Now, aren't we gonna send out letters to all these people?
So we do typically
Right
send
there,
out
you can tell them
letters.
what it's gonna cost.
We invite them to this neighborhood meeting.
Right, yeah.
And then we find out who's
So we're already
really
sending
engaged.
letters.
I do want to mention, though, that the resident in Woodland Acres has found a online petition process that she's been using, and I said that would be fine.
Yep.
So I know there's ways of doing a petition that may make it more productive.
There are definitely some technology solutions that can be leveraged in this process, and that are going to be of minimal impact to staff, because they're not that hard to set up, whether it's SurveyMonkey or something else out there that will survey people. Now, not everybody is going to be that electronically inclined to do that, so we're probably still gonna have some mailing costs. But all I'm asking at this point is for all of us to kind of brainstorm this a little bit and come back and give Brad some options. Kim?
I'll just add that if the council chooses to go ahead and pay for a feasibility every year, you're not gonna need any more acceleration than that.
Really?
It'll be done.
Is that that's what you're feeling from these meetings?
Yes.
Oh, okay, well,
absolutely.
that's good to know. Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's helpful. Okay.
It's been the big sticky point.
Been a big one, huh?
What's the council think? You wanna?
Yeah, you want to give some direction? How do you feel about that, about doing the feasibility studies as the, Kim?
We don't necessarily need that direction.
You don't need that
We'll
direction?
bring back the resolution, the revisions.
Yeah, I would like to know what everyone's thinking here just real quick.
Well, I think, having a table that you can just, estimate, like you said, estimate the numbers without actually doing a real feasibility study that costs us money. And then maybe when you get some interest, then maybe, again, having some skin in the game. I don't think we should pay for the, feasibility study us. Maybe they have some skin in the game. Maybe it's, 50-50, 25% the residents, 75% us, something, so that it's not just us. They have to have some skin in the game. That's what I'm thinking.
All right, Jeff.
I agree with that, and, I think that the idea of proposing larger projects, the individual projects, stringing them together, and presenting that to the folks, I think that's a good idea too.
I think what we, excuse me, Mayor.
No, go ahead,
I think what we tried to do in the past, or the last two roadway projects, is we try to garner that 75%, which really tells us that they're engaged, they want this to happen. So we haven't had to wait for that, or worry about necessarily the initial payment of that feasibility report, because we know that they're serious and that those costs are going to be rolled back into the assessments anyway, and so they haven't. That hasn't been an issue at all.
Okay. So the process, as you describe it, is first going to be letters out to them advising of them with a ballpark figure. Then we need our 35% before a feasibility study is paid for by the city. Tom and I actually passed this. I remember voting on this, and I voted for it because we had spent an awful lot of money on these feasibility studies. That was years back. If staff is telling me, from your experience at these meetings, which I do not go to for good reason, it's staff's meeting, that if these feasibility studies are passed on a 5-year basis or CIP basis, and they can be updated for 3 or 4 years perhaps, and I'll kind of hold you to 3 years at least, you're thinking that these projects are really going to take off, we're really going to have buy-in, they're really going to go. Is that what I'm hearing?
I really do. I think you're going to see people having more information available to them, and I really think that they're going to move forward.
Then it turns out to be money well spent because we're spending less on maintenance for a few years after that. Jeff, if you have a quick follow-up to that, I got to go to Danny. Okay. Danny?
No, I think that's a good plan. I almost think the city should absorb 100% of the feasibility study. If you're talking about $3,000, the question then, though, will be, if this kind of lights its own fire, could we wind up doing how many of these? 20, 30,
because
50?
it's on a rotating 5-year schedule.
Oh, that's right.
It's on a
So
rotating-
each year we do a different
Yeah,
area.
and in terms of having skin in the game, from my perspective, just so I'm very clear, skin in the game in this case, I'm not talking about the residents paying in. If it's on a 5-year rotating basis and they have to get the signatures to do it on that CIP process, that is skin in the game. Because I've seen that the process that Tom and I implemented has slowed down progress, but even with that, people are doing it. Go ahead, Tom.
Well, the only other question, if we didn't, and then to the John and Jeff, if we did have them have skin in the game, then how do we roll that cost into do we write a check back to the resident or residents that paid the money for the skin they put in the game? How do we bill that out? And it just seems overly complicated for not a lot of money. That's my only thing. If it was $5 or $6,000, then I think we got a problem.
Based on the conversation, I think I'm leaning towards
You got that? Okay.
Yeah, just to have those things done every 5 years. They can be updated as they roll back around. It's an impetus, like Tom has said, very importantly, a buy-in. We need to get buy-in on this. These people need to be educated. They need to understand. We haven't been taking the taxes from them. Compare your taxes to every other city that surrounds us. We have not been taking the amount of taxes that these other cities have, and this is why, because it falls right within their decision matrix to make sure that they can do this when they want to. The order doesn't come from this table. The residents decide.
Well, and I just want to, we'll get our money.
We'll get our money. And sooner or later.
Sooner or later.
All right, Brad, excellent. Thank you for bringing that forward. That was incredibly helpful. Hopefully you've got some direction from us on that.
And so the plan would be to bring back a resolution at the next meeting.
I look forward to seeing it, and yeah, that was good proactive move. It's nice how this council is now doing and seeing proactive things from its staff. It's great to see. Great to see. All right, moving forward here, guys. And Tom?
City council reports and future agenda items. Now that we have a couple new planning commission members, I say we put them to work. So, there's probably stuff, and I'll just direct it to staff, or things that maybe we should look at. There always is. Maybe some stuff on a list. I'm not saying what. I'm saying there probably is. So maybe we can get a few things and start working on things.
Kim?
Mayor and council members, I do have a list going. I will respectfully request that we don't move real quickly on that right now, because we are very close to having a draft of the comprehensive plan, and we need to get through that.
Gotta get
It is due May 31st.
Good point.
Yep.
Thank you.
Falls, get that done, and I bet you guys do have a nice long list for those gentlemen, so they're gonna be busy. If that's all, anyone else on that? City council updates? Tom, could you do me a favor and read that community calendar for us?
Oh, certainly. Matamidi Public Schools Board Meeting, Thursday, February 14th and 28th, Matamidi District Education Center, 7 p.m. Stillwater Public Schools Board Meeting, Thursday, February 14th, Stillwater City Hall, 7 p.m. Washington County Commissioners Meeting, Tuesdays, Government Center, 9 a.m. And the city office is closed President's Day, Monday, February 18th, 2019.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, and do I have a motion to adjourn?
I would move to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Very good. All those in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. We are adjourned.